Fine, it's not that well attended.
I'd like to call the executive session of the governing board. Can I get a motion to adjourn our meeting? Can I get a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We will begin our next meeting as soon as our final member joins us.
Did she make an amendment to? Okay.
Well, I mean, she can make a motion, but she make sure everything's on it.
I was going to the regular board presentation.
I have moved, yes, I have a couple of things I'd like to move. I have a couple of things I'd like removed.
You want removed?
I want 1C, 1, 4, 6, and 12.
Okay.
I really want us to get to have time to have a budget meeting.
6 and 12?
And we can do, if we just move
So we're
Actually, I
moving
like that
10A
too.
to
I
the
was
next
feeling.
meeting?
10A.
10A.
Before 7. Have it done.
Oh,
Yeah, Jenny was
right,
going to do that
was
too.
already planning to move that.
That's 9B.
So why don't we move,
9B to after 5.
9B,
11.
after 6C?
Yes, after 6C, sorry.
Do you want to do it after 6B or 6C?
6C. Okay. And you got the pen?
If I get it wrong, be sure and correct me.
I got you.
We're done.
I got your back.
I call to order the regular meeting of the governing board. Please rise for the pledge of allegiance. The flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Let the record show all board members are present. Can I get a motion to adopt the agenda?
I move that we adopt the agenda with the following changes. Move item 9B to after item 5. Move item 11, which would be public comments, to after item 6C. And the following items to move to the next board meeting, which would be June 27th, I believe. That would be preview items 10A, 10C, 10C 1 through 4, as well as 6 and 12.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we do not have awards and achievements tonight since our trustee awards gal she's on vacation. Well deserved. So 9B.
Okay. All right, so, oh my goodness, I have to find it now in my stack. Towards the back. Okay. I move that the governing board accept the administration's recommendation for the principal at Boulder Creek High School.
Name.
Brittany Sutton.
I second.
Second?
I got a motion. We've got a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Can we all give Ms. Sutton a hand and welcome her to a new principal?
Does, she wants to?
We'd like to
Jenna, you want to tell us about
congratulate-
our new
So
principal?
Mrs. Sutton has been with us for a very long time in the Deer Valley community. She even was a student in Deer Valley and has worked her way all the way up to be principal of Boulder Creek High School. We're very excited to have her join the Anthem team.
Thank you so much, and I'm so excited to take on this new challenge. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Woo!
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Okay, on to governing board reports. For a change, I am requesting to go first tonight. I know it's out of our normal. I normally am last. Just to give a quick rundown of my 2 weeks, I've dedicated 90 hours to my paid employment, 8 hours to Deer Valley meetings, 81 emails, 10 hours reading information, reviewing current agenda, creating agenda items, research multiple policies, dedicated 3 days to ASBA, and done whatever is needed to smooth Dr. Finch's transition into our district. And I originally had prepared a speech, actually a conversation about some of what's been occurring, which the majority of the people who would know are aware of. But I've given my statement. I gave my statement earlier this evening to the reporter who was asked, and I will state it here again for the record. The correspondence that occurred from an individual who had been trolling me on Twitter is at the time, though he's claiming differently now, was from an individual on his private page as a private citizen. And I respect his right to a Second Amendment right, or a First Amendment right. And I also reserve mine. I am not going to speak beyond that. Like I said, I've given my report to, or you know, a statement to the press because they asked for one. And again, I gave that report outside because once I enter these doors, I am not a private citizen. I am an elected official. But when I leave, I'm still a private citizen and entitled to defend myself, even if I am not necessarily nice in doing so. However, of everything that I did prepare, there is one thing that I do want to say because it attaches to an agenda request item for the future. Of all the people who have emailed me support for my side, for my ability to have my say, for the individuals who have sent me a lot of things, they've sent me snapshots of the offended individuals' pages showing all sorts of bad words, much stronger than my using the word BS. That doesn't do us any good. It doesn't do anything. I could pull up all of their pages and show that doesn't do any good. But there was one parent that sent me something, and it's important to put here. This parent sent me a video and it had one statement. It said, if they could do this to you, what chance would another student or perhaps a teacher have if they did this to them? And I thought that was a fairly profound statement, so I watched the video. And the video was of a young man who had been on the receiving end of a similar campaign as has been taken. And it was his mom, and his mom was talking about how her son committed suicide, how her son had been on the receiving end of the campaign against him because he made one person angry and they all attacked. I want to put an agenda request that I think we do need to put what our bullying policies are, what programs we offer. And I think that we need to have a productive discussion from all directions as to what we're doing in our district. We hear regularly from teachers that they're bullied by their administrators, or administrators that they're bullied by their administrators, or parents by their teachers, or students by other students. This isn't about this one situation. This is epidemic in our district. Last month we had a 10-year-old boy who was berated on Facebook until we were able to step in and say, take it down and take it down now. The conversation that occurred had nothing to do with DVUSD. It should never be brought to this room. It is inappropriate to be brought to this room. And I think it damages public education when we do that. I do not accept, my Twitter is locked down because I do not accept children on my Twitter, and I don't believe anyone else should either. So my second request is I think we need to look at our policy surrounding students and being online with staff who have a private account. And I think that any policy that we have should apply to board members as well. We should not have students on our account if they are, if we are going to talk about any type of subject that is political or religious in nature. That is the last thing I will say about this, other than I will not resign. I would not ask a student who was bullied to apologize when they responded, even if their response was negative at the time. If they were pushed and pushed and pushed, when they finally responded, it was negative. I wouldn't ask them to apologize. However, if the other individual in the conversation, the one, wants to meet privately and we can talk, I'm willing to do that. That offer has been out there for the last 3 years, and no one, well, that's not true. A lot of people have taken up that offer. I've had a lot of productive conversations with individuals. So as for the conference that we attended, let me just say I am more convinced than ever that selecting Dr. Finch as our next superintendent was a wonderful decision. It was a pleasure learning with him. It was a pleasure discussing things with him. And we did enjoy time with both Ms. O'Brien and Ms. Ordway. I also enjoyed meeting with him about our district and the positive aspects of our district, as well as the challenges that we face. There was some really good information, ironically, on civil discourse, on how civil discourse has taken over our society in general. And a little more ironically, when Dr. Finch and I were leaving Flagstaff, a conversation to the other direction on civil discourse was also on the radio. So it was an interesting, and it gave us an opportunity to talk a lot about that as well. We also need to get on the policy agenda BCA for a board discussion. ASBA would like us to have a poster of our board ethics in our boardroom so that the public is aware of them. And we need to have a board discussion as to what we want on there and what they want, if we want to adopt them as they are currently, or if we want to do something different. And then the last thing is we had a wonderful speaker named Sam Glenn who was, I had sent Dr. via text about him last year, I believe, from ASBO.
Ms. Fisher?
Yes, Ms. Ordway has the book. It's an awesome book. But more so than that, it's listening to him and how his attitude was changed by a wonderful man. I probably shouldn't spoil it, but it was Zig Ziglar. So if you ever get to hear him, that's who his mentor was. And his wonderful drawing. So I would like to, at some point, bring him into the district, whether it's attached to a convocation or an event here at the district office. I think it would be good for our staff, as I've recommended in the past, but I think we will continue to hold that recommendation. And that's the extent of my board report. Oh, one other final thing. Just because those of you who do know my family, I want you to be aware that the only thing that this action against me has produced is it has put a new fear into my children. So for those of you who are his teachers, and you know who you are, my kids are scared. So if you can just keep him in your hand, as I know you always do, and I appreciate that, and be sensitive to, especially with his disabilities, that he needs that. Okay? Ms. Frank.
Well, to change the tone slightly, it's hard to believe that it's only been 2 weeks since school let out for the summer. One thing that I have noticed is that my teacher friends and former colleagues seem to be very busy on social media, and they seem to fall into one of two categories. Those friends who have cleaned out the garage, every cabinet, every closet, and scrubbed the baseboards, and those friends who have sat at the beach for the past 2 weeks. I have done neither of those things, but I have read some fascinating board updates and reports. I also enjoyed meeting Dr. Finch informally during his last visit, and very impressed with him, and looking forward to working with him going forward. And lastly, I want to mention that I also spent a day up in Flagstaff, but not with the board. I spent it with the cool people from Sierra Verde, who had a week of professional training through APS's STEM Schools Grant for the Future, if I've got all those words in the right order, which I don't think I have. So I really enjoyed meeting with them, discussing ways to partner with them and to help them reach their goals to become an outstanding, or an even more outstanding, I should say, STEM school. So that's the extent of my board report.
Send the first group to mine. Miss Tweedy.
I also got the opportunity to see Dr. Finch while he was in Arizona briefly, and excited to have him in Deer Valley. Think we did make an excellent decision. I also wanted to take a minute because Miss Frank was modest. I wanted to congratulate Miss Frank. For those of you who don't know, she works for the Air Quality Department, and she is a curriculum writer, and her program won a NACO Achievement Award, and it also won 100 Brilliant Ideas That Work, and those are for the best innovations in government. So congratulations. And that's the end of my report.
Thank you, Ms. Tweedy.
Miss O'Brien.
I have one request, and that is to receive the list of requests for study sessions. If it wasn't, I couldn't find it in the last board update. There have been multiple requests over the last few meetings for different topics, and so I just want to make sure that the running list is covered. And then, and thank you, Dr. Beitenheimer. And otherwise, I'm going to forego my board report in effort to get us to the end of this meeting and onto our study session as quickly as possible. Thank you.
Dr. V, was it in the last Friday update? Oh, okay. She put it in the minutes. So I did request it for you, Ms. O'Brien, but I will make sure that we get that. Ms. Ordway.
I would like all of our retiring employees, that this is the last board meeting at Deer Valley they're attending, to please stand up so we can be green with envy and clap for your release. I mean, your Goodbye.
Okay.
And I, too, will make it short. My request is that we make sure that we have that list of study sessions maybe sooner than later so we can start prioritizing
Wednesday would be.
and maybe melding them together.
Tomorrow's Wednesday. Thursday. We can get it Thursday.
Not a problem. Done.
Yep. And for obvious reasons, I am going to turn over public comments to to Dr. Weitenheimer.
Dr. Reed, do you have a report?
Yeah. Sorry,
Are we
yes.
gonna finish
You're right.
those?
Yes, we're gonna finish.
No,
I
I'm
was
gonna
let him do it.
I'm gonna pass on superintendent report. And
Oh, we do have
do you want to do the
Jim's.
fiscal? You want to do those two
Mhm.
first? Okay.
Yeah, let's go and
Jim,
get your
if you'll do
reports,
your
Jim.
two, and then we'll do public comments.
Yep.
President Fisher, members of the board, Dr. Weitenheimer, just two quick reports to share with you. The student enrollment report, the last day of school, or the 180th day, continuing at a 0.7% reduction, which is kind of where we settled in at for almost the entire year for the 2016-17 school year. And I'd be happy to answer any questions regarding the enrollment report. Hearing none, I'll move on to the district financial report. So we have the May report for you. About $1 million is what our projected carry forward is, which is slightly lower by about $10,000 month over month. But year over year, it's a fairly significant increase, about $400,000 increase year over year. So we are unfortunately month over month we're trending that we're spending a little bit more money, and that's due to the fact that we were able to complete the balance of contract payment for our 9-month employees. So some of that is more certain for us at this point in time, but still on track with us, and we will certainly use that updated number from the May report in the budget discussion we're going to have later on this evening. And I'll be happy to answer any other reports or any other questions regarding that report.
Anybody have anything now, or you want to wait till our study session? I think we got you in the study session, Jim.
Okay, so we are moving on to public comments, and just to clarify for those speakers who may not have attended a board meeting, the admonishment is standard protocol. It's read at every board meeting prior to public comments. It's not specific to this meeting. The board invites public comment on the district's business in general and on any agenda item in specific. All speakers must observe the rules of decorum. Speakers must fill out a card listing name, address, and topic and hand it to the board secretary prior to the president calling the meeting to order. Speakers must make their comments in no more than 3 minutes. If necessary to accommodate all speakers within the 30-minute overall limit, the board president may shorten each speaker's time. Constructive criticism is in order. Rudeness, vulgarity, disruptive conduct, or remarks disrespecting personal dignity are not in order and will not be allowed. Under the Arizona Open Meeting Law, the governing board cannot discuss or act on any items not listed on the agenda. Board members may respond to criticism made by a speaker, ask staff to review a matter, or ask that a matter be put on a future agenda.
Thank you. We have 5 speakers tonight, so I'll call the first 3. Audiode, Kathy Huntington, and KT Friend. Please state your name for the record, and then your 3 minutes will begin.
My name is Ade Oda. I am a teacher at Barry Goldwater High School. On June 6, 2017, I engaged my friend Nick Gearing and the board president on a political topic on Twitter. The conversation back and forth quickly degraded into the board president calling my statement of facts bull poop, and shortly after that calling me, and I quote, an anti-American, Trump-hating troll. No matter what you say, it is B*********. The conversation between the two of us ended after this. As a Palestinian American Muslim, I have been called worse names in my life, but never anything like this from one of my superiors. I tried to let it roll off my back, but have since concluded that I will neither suffer this abuse nor fear any future retribution at the hands of the DVUSD school board president. Although the conversation between the two of us ended in the morning, the conversation between the board president and students, former students, community members, and parents raged on all day. The board member kept defending herself, calling herself a private citizen, invoking freedom of speech. though dozens of members of the DVUSD community spoke up to tell the board president that she represents the district in a negative light. The board president at this point proudly stated in her bio that she works and therefore represents both Phoenix Union and Deer Valley District. No one had a problem with her political stance. She is allowed to think what she would like. What everyone did have a problem with was with her rampant unprofessionalism. In her apology that she tweeted out, she never really did apologize for her behavior and language towards me. The board president claims that she did not reply as a DVUSD board member and did not use profanity in that capacity. However, as a leader, she should know that her public statements negatively impacted the district. I proudly recognize that I am representing more than myself online, and I take steps to ensure my statements do not discredit my profession or negatively impact my ability to teach the students in the district. She also claims that there was no bullying or harassment. I strongly, forcefully disagree. Name calling is something that we learn is wrong in elementary school. Never once in my political discourse online have I lowered myself to name calling, and it took the board president only a few conversations to resort to this. What images does this send our students and community that the president of our school boards thinks that this type of rhetoric is acceptable towards anyone, let alone an educator? Students, staff, and members of the DVUSD community deserve better than a board president who would sink so low to attack teachers publicly on social media. As president of the school board, she must realize that her conduct in any public space, as her Twitter account was public at the time, must be held to the highest standard, just like every educator understands that they must do the same. The district cannot have a board president that resorts to name calling to express different opinions. Thank you so much.
Kathy Huntington.
Hold on. This is the one and only speaker which I will invoke my right to respond to as we have here, because it is regarding our criticism. The one statement I will make is that the facts that you're putting out are incorrect. I did not continue throughout the day. And the snapshots that have been taken are parts of a conversation. My conversation was with Mr. Gearing, and you have chose to interject repeatedly. This is not the first time, this is not the first conversation. I appreciate now I can put a face to the name, and I will make an offer to speak with you exclusively and have a productive conversation. I have requested that you not troll me in the past. And the statement of the trolling is because you were trolling me. And I am not, I will not apologize for defending myself, even if it was not in the nicest manner, only because I am human. My one regret is that I let you push the buttons over and over again till I did snap in a negative way. So that's my one regret. I should have never allowed it to go that far, because I should have been adult enough to say you need to stop. It's enough, and I didn't. So I allowed that, and I responded in a negative way. If you personally would like to have a productive conversation, we can meet individually and do so. At no time have I ever bullied a teacher. I have never attacked a teacher. However, your group has not only tweeted out over 300 times, you've contacted my employer with false statements and false information. And I will say that that is, in fact, an active case of bullying. And that's the last comment I will reply to.
Kathy Huntington.
Good evening. I'm going to start, even though I tell all my seniors not to do this in their essays, I'm going to open with a quotation. This is from Stephen R. Covey, and he says that most people do not listen with the intent to understand. They listen with the intent to reply. I ask that you please listen with an intent to understand. Ms. Fisher. I'm here tonight to address Ms. Kim Fisher's recent conduct on social media. Ms. Fisher's previously public Twitter account is under the username at KimFisher4, the number 4, EDU. In the bio of her account, Ms. Fisher lists herself as the DVUSD board president and school finance professional for Phoenix Union High School District. As such, anything she tweets comes from the perspective of the Deer Valley Unified School District Governing Board President. From this account, Ms. Fisher published public tweets calling Mr. Nicholas Gearing Deer Valley Education Foundation Teacher of the Year for 2016, and Mr. Ade Oda, current Barry Goldwater High School teacher, quote, anti-American, Trump-hating trolls. concluding that particular tweet with, quote, "No matter what you say, it's bull." And that one was edited, though for clarity, I will quote Ms. Fisher directly and use the term. In this particular tweet, Ms. Fisher chose to censor the word, quote, "bullshit," which she previously used in earlier tweets directed at Mr. Gearing and Mr. Ode. The Arizona School Board Association published the personal attributes necessary to be an effective school board member. Among these attributes are the ability to communicate well with others. And Ms. Fisher, as I'm speaking to you, it would be appropriate for you to make eye contact with me. Thank you. Have professional respect for district staff. Ms. Fisher chose to publish these tweets from her account that clearly states her position as DVUSD board president. While we have every right to exercise our freedom of speech, we should not and cannot expect freedom from consequences from what we speak, or in Ms. Fisher's case, publish on social media. You owe Mr. Gearing and Mr. Ode an apology. Not an apology that they were offended, but an apology that you were offensive and unprofessional. We do not ask you to pardon me. You owe the DVSD community an apology for failing to display the standards of excellence to which our students and staff are held. We do not ask you to again apologize that we were offended, but rather for your offensive statements. We ask you to ensure us, the people for whom you work, that you will in all instances represent DVUSD in nothing less than a positive professional manner. And if you cannot, please prepare for a recall election. Thank you.
KT Friend.
Good evening. I believe we all have a right to speak about our views using the various social media platforms. However, when a person includes their job title in their profile on that platform, then their behavior should align with the ethical guidelines of that title. The board member ethics for this district suggests that board members take no private action that will compromise the board or administration. Calling a teacher an anti-American Trump-hating troll is at the very least name-calling, and given your position of authority in the district, it could be construed as bullying. Neither of these are representative of what I expect from this district. We need to hold our board to the standards that we hold our students to, especially since they are adults with better judgment, presumably. I find this behavior unacceptable, and I too call for your apology to Mr. Oda and Mr. Gearing. Thank you.
Sharzand and Sharon Hands. Shar?
Hi, this is Sharzand. It's so good to be here and finally see the board that I voted for face to face. I'm actually myself, by education and experience, a computer scientist. I have 2 kids. They went through DVUSD education all through. My daughter is actually in ASU Barrett Honor School now. My son is in Berry Goldwater. Looking forward to the new principal. Unfortunately, around this issue that has come up, the bird is out of cage. I learned this from my kids at home. They showed me the postings and they said, look at this. This is happening between a member of a DVUSD board and one of our teachers. And I read this, and immediately I had 2 prime concerns. One was that I could see that this is against DVUSD's its own cyberbullying policy. If you read the policy, it says the policy is not limited to a school. Even outside the school, if the student engage in any name calling and any kind of behavior demeaning somebody else, that is considered cyberbullying. And the other concern was, for any reason, calling a Palestinian American anti-American. We are a family of Iranian Americans, and I could see it in the eyes of my kids that if they go back to school and open their mouths, they could be easily labeled as anti-American. More than half the population of this country did not vote for Trump. It's a fact, right? Are we going to call all those anti-American? You know, that's definitely. So my concern is not just the name calling. My concern is that, Ms. Fisher, you need to be sent to a diversity education. You never ever, for any reason, call a teacher in your own school district anti-American because you do not agree with the political perspective or opinion of that person. Imagine what happens if such a scenario comes up between our students in our schools. What a chaos it will be that if they start calling each other anti-American, especially the ones that come from a different national origin. So I would strongly recommend that you do make a public apology, and I request the board to send you to a diversity education.
Sharon Hands.
Sharon Hans, I have been a parent in the district for 16 years. I've put 2 daughters through Deer Valley High School. My first daughter graduated Deer Valley High School in 2007. She did great. Policies in this district have changed since 2007. Bullying that goes on between the administration, a few of the teachers, most of the teachers are very good here in Deer Valley District. But the bullying that goes on, I don't even know how to say it. It's like it's been condoned. The administration allows it to go on. My daughter had a restraining order. My youngest daughter, who's 21, just graduated 2014. They allowed the girl that we had the restraining order on, that beat her up, took video of it, passed it around the school. They allowed her to taunt her and follow her out of the school. This is no different. Trolling is no different here. And you should be ashamed of yourself as a teacher. And I'm ashamed that this district allows teachers like this to stay in our district, or administration. The bullying has got to stop. It's only hurting our kids. You have kids on your Twitter?
You have to address your comments to us. Only.
I mean, this politics should not even be in front of our kids. I don't know what else to say. I feel it's horrible. I feel this is a horrible display of behavior of teacher, administration, board, whatever, everybody that is involved in this situation. It shouldn't even be happening.
That concludes the public comment section, and we're ready to move into item number 7, old business.
Okay, so moving on to item 7A, I move that the governing board accept the administration's recommendation to approve a coding program for students to be developed during the 2017-18 school year.
Second.
No changes in this item from the last time.
Okay. Do we have any conversation? Yes, Ms. Tweedy.
Were we funding coding in last year's budget, or is this new to this year's budget?
President Fisher, Ms. Tweedy, so we had a line item in this year's budget that was not utilized, or a very little amount of it was utilized, because we're still not done with the fiscal year. There may be some expenses that I'm not aware of, so that money, we're requesting that money for inclusion in the fiscal year 18 budget as part of the classroom site fund plan that is on the agenda for later this evening.
Well, I guess a few things. So when we had our first budget discussion, I asked if there was any money when we were presented with the deficit in the budget for program expansion, and I was told that no, there was, or new programs, and I was told that wasn't the case. And then also when I got this board material, In one spot, it said $97,000 was being funded out of bond money, M&O money, and other revenue sources. And then in another spot, it said 100 grand was coming out of 301 money. So I guess I don't understand that. How's it all coming out of 301 money and coming out of bond money at the same time?
President Fisher, Ms. Tweedy, so there are primarily two sources of money that we have identified for this particular initiative. And again, that's pending the board's decision this evening. The primary source for the training will come from the Classroom Site Fund for teacher development. And then there are some equipment needs that would be funded from the technology portion of the bond authorization.
How much? Okay, so I guess in one spot it looked like the whole thing was costing $97,000, and then in another spot it said $100,000 out of 301. And then I'm also confused because I was told there was no money in the budget for new programs. So I guess I just don't understand this item at all.
Again, no direct M&O dollars for program extension was the intention of the information when we answered that question previously. This money is bond money and Classroom Site Fund money for this particular program, again, pending the board's decision to even do it.
If I can, okay. It does say under fiscal impact, 2013 bond proceeds, M&O, and other sources. So M&O is mentioned in the agenda item.
It is, I didn't write the green particularly here, but I think there's a potential for the for M&O funds, but we have the $97,500 rounded to $100,000 in the Classroom Site Fund. There are some technology needs that are also part of this that will be part of the bond purchase, so we just wanted to make sure that it is known that the bond will be also participating with this. So what is intended with what's presented here is the $97,500 has been rounded to $100,000 out of the Classroom Site Fund for the teacher development of this particular program, and then there will be some ongoing bond proceeds for technology needs that will also help to augment this in addition to that $97,500.
Okay, so the 97.5 does not include money that could potentially be spent from M&O as well as money that would be spent from the bond. The 97.5 is simply is funding that would come from Classroom Site Fund. Is that, am I understanding that correctly?
President Fisher, Ms. Frank, yes, that is correct. So the 97.5 is almost exclusively, we intend to cover that with the Classroom Site Fund. But there will be some technology that we need to purchase. And the reason that we didn't indicate a dollar value for that is some of that technology that we will be purchasing will serve a dual purpose. It won't be specifically or primarily for just for the coding needs. It can be used for other needs of the students. So for example, our one-to-one initiative, there are some replacements. We may make some choices in terms of what equipment we buy, so that it can serve not only the one-to-one initiative that we have at our high schools, but also serve in the capacity of this particular program as well. But again, those needs will be funded from the bond and are not represented in the 97.5 that's on the cover.
Okay, I do have some other additional. I think we all have. Do you want to go ahead or shall I? Okay.
Yeah, let's let
Where should we let?
finish. Let's let Jenny finish. Unless Darcy, you were in the middle of one. Okay. So let's let Ms. Frank finish, and then
Okay.
we'll move on to Ms. Tweedy.
So I did ask at the last board meeting for some information on the financial impact as well as scheduling and workload, and I would like to thank Dr. Galligan for providing that information in detail. I do think the prospect of increasing computer education and coding is and supporting STEM is very exciting. I do have some additional questions and some concerns. It looks like the 97.5, what we would be approving tonight is the cost to implement the program going forward for 1 year, correct?
President Fisher, Ms. Frank, I may have to defer to Dr. Galligan, but my understanding is, yes, that is the money that we set aside for fiscal year 17 was for planning. Some of that planning took place, but there were no there wasn't a significant expense related to that in fiscal year 17. So we may refer to this year, that since it's not over yet, as a pre-planning year, and next year will be more of a planning year with some pilot opportunities for throughout the year as the planning evolves. So, and I might defer to Dr. Galligan for any additional information.
President Fisher, Ms. Frank, what we brought you was a 4-year and beyond progression of learning and a timeline for that. This particular evening is asking you to consider that, as well as simply next year's funding expenditure. We would bring to you each spring our proposed plan moving forward each year. When we look at fiscal year 19, we are hoping to have some restructuring of specials at our K-6 level so that we would be better able to utilize current staffing to support computer science education at our K-6 schools. Right now, we have, I would say, anywhere from 5 to 7 schools who have jumped wholeheartedly or begun exploring in computer science, and then another handful who have asked to find out more about it. And so this is our way of wrapping our arms around a very fast-moving ball in coding, and we want to broaden it to computer science education rather than just the narrow topic of coding. And so when you have asked, and Ms. Tweedy, what are you voting on today, it would be very specifically next year's progression in this timeline, with the understanding that we will bring you each year as that timeline unfolds, as it's been laid out, and adjustments will be made, obviously, as schools come on board.
I think, and that is what I thought the situation was. When I look in the information you provided, and it looks like it would be necessary to add, I see at least 2 FTE, one for STEM curriculum staffing and one for IS&T staffing. And then I would assume as we roll this out into elementaries, and if it becomes a special area class, then you would need at least some FTE qualified to teach that as a special, if that were to be the direction the district would go in. So I think for myself, looking at this, I could vote tonight and I would be approving $97,500 essentially for next year. But this to me looks like, as you said, a multi-year plan. And my concern is, I really want to know, what is the impact going to be to M&O in 2 years or 3 years down the line? Because if we vote tonight to approve this and then next year we go, oh, well, we can't afford that, then we've spent money on something that may or may not be sustainable, if that makes sense. So for me as a board member, I think I like to see the big picture. M&O has been the focus of much discussion at every budget meeting, every budget talk and board meeting that I can recall attending whenever the budget rolls around and salaries are discussed, because, you know, salaries come from M&O. I'm not telling anyone anything they don't know. So for me, I think rather than voting on this piecemeal year by year, I think it would be to our benefit to look at the grander picture and then determine, can we afford this? You know, we can afford it this year, but what about next year and the year after that? You know, not knowing that we don't have a crystal ball, we don't always know what the legislature is going to do. And then if we can't afford it, are there areas we have to cut to afford it? I mean, it's kind of what we all do with our personal budgets, if that makes sense. So, so those are my thoughts. And I think other people have other questions.
Ms. Tweedy.
Or if you would like to respond to anything that I've said.
Certainly, Ms. Fisher, Ms. Frank. We can certainly bring this back to you all at the July board meeting. That would give us enough time that we can do our very best to future plan out, which we've tried to do, without knowing how enrollments will go, changes in technologies, how we're actually going to look at restructuring our current specials that are 5-day typically maybe to a 3-day or a 6-day, and how that impact might work for our schools that are small. It's really our tiny K-6 schools that may in the end need some additional FTE support. So that would give us a bit more time to work that out, and we'd be happy to bring it back to the July meeting.
Well, I always feel that you can never have too much information. More information is better than less information. So,
Ms. Tweedy, if you could finish your questions.
Well, and just a statement, I guess, and I think too, when we look at our budget tonight, I mean, if we're not able to address, the school level wants and what they put on their list, and we weren't able to come where we were with the salary, and I did say when we looked at the raises, if you tell me I'm poor, I'm going to vote like a poor person. And this would kind of fall under that. I mean, if we can't find the money by reducing money we're already spending on another program to pay for this program, we're not in a position to afford program expansion. And I think it hurts employee morale when we tell them we can't afford things that the schools need, we can't afford employees at the school level, but we can afford to expand programs. And this has happened year after year after year. So unless the money's coming from a program that maybe could be scaled back to fund this, I just would be uncomfortable, period. Spending more money on programs and telling schools we can't afford to staff you correctly, and telling parents your kid's going to sit in a class of 40 kids, and then telling underpaid employees we can't afford to pay you, but we can afford to expand programs. I find that offensive, and I wouldn't do that to the employees in this district.
Hi, Dr. Galligan. I guess where I'm a little confused, because we're talking about the 97,000 rounded to 100,000 is for training, and then we're talking about there's going to be the additional need for technology, and I know we do already have our one-to-one, and we talked about the replacement, and you did present all that to us before, and I believe I may have asked then if we're using any kind of E-rate to cover any of the cost of those types of things, and our connectivity, that kind of stuff. It may be beneficial if we do have our budget discussion and then bring this item back. I do believe bringing programs like coding for our students is very important. I know I've harped on it before and regularly do, that it's these small programs like coding that will give our students the opportunity to move into the future. It's not necessarily that not all students are college bound, but some students aren't going to be college bound straight out of high school. Some of them need the years to develop and get their education a little later on. So we have to make sure that they have a knowledge base to help them, or even if they are college bound, you can code in college and pay part of your way. So I do think that type of stuff is very important, but in looking at what Ms. Tweedy is saying, I do understand that as well. We have a lot of programs that we have kind of expand year after year. Some that we've asked, have they ever been, when were they approved, or what did those look like, or how did they become? And I just think it would be beneficial if we get to that point where we have our budget discussion, and then we maybe look at an overall. Is there a plan, a program that is maybe not successful somewhere that it would benefit our students to eliminate, and then bring in something like a coding academy to kind of offset, because we do face year after year we do face our teachers standing in front of us saying they can't live on what we're paying them, and I think there's going to have to be a lot of realignment on what we're doing, because as I've told Jim before, and I'll say it again, this district does a wonderful job, especially comparative to a lot of other districts, in keeping our administrative costs down and our other costs down, and getting those dollars into the classroom. but we need to make sure that our programs are aligned to where we're putting our money where it's going to best serve our students. So if the rest of the board is willing to, like you said, move it to July to give you time to do that full planning so we have a full picture of what this looks like, rather than piecemeal it. Because my concern is that we're only planning the training, so it would be wonderful. We train a group of staff or we train individuals, and then what? Do we have the technology for them? Do we have the curricula for them? Do we have the space for them? Do we have everything they need to have a successful program? Because then we're going to turn around and evaluate those instructors on their success in a program. And if their program has failed, and to no fault of their own, that's, you know, we're setting them up for a failure if we do that. So I would appreciate us moving it. Yeah. But does anybody else have a comment, or can we just go ahead and move? Ms. O'Brien? Ms. Ordway?
Right, Dr. Galligan, what process do you use, and does that process include any of the things that Mrs. Fisher was just asking about? Do we look for space or look for longevity of a program before we enter into this?
President Fisher, Ms. Ordway, we certainly did do that through the Computer Education Science Committee that had parents, administrators, teachers, business and community members. We looked at, across our district, at campuses that already are offering coding type clubs, specials, programs from kindergarten through 12th grade. We also looked at the capacity of a campus to offer it based on the amount of technology already on their campuses. And we looked at their actual schedules. So are they running a 3-day schedule, 4-day schedule, 5-day schedule at the elementary level, just to see where that particular need might fall. When we had our students come do a panel discussion with us, they were very clear that they felt at the elementary level, and these were our high school kiddos as well as our young ones in elementary, that they would prefer that they have the opportunity to experience and learn computer science in more of a special type environment. Clubs before and after school, obviously, yes, also part of our community education. So those were all some of the tasks that we went through from last April through this past May when we concluded the year committee.
And then with this inception of this program, if we get to consider it, is there a diverse amount of students that will be able to have this offered to them?
President Fisher, Ms. Ordway, when you say a diverse...
Well, will it be equitable across the district on campus, on the campuses?
That is the goal, to ensure that Title I students and our female students as well as our male students all have equal access to computer science education, whether they are in a lower or higher socioeconomic school. That's number one. That was the number one goal, to ensure equity.
Ms. Frank did Ms. Ordway's questions and Dr. Galligan's. Did that answer any of the questions that you had, Ms. Frank? Did that answer any of the questions? Would you?
I do not have further questions.
No, but I guess what I'm asking you is you wanted to table it until July, and Dr. Galligan said we could do that. But then Ms. Ordway asked questions did they answer any of your questions?
Oh, Mrs.
No, they did not. Okay, so you would still like to table it?
I do. I apologize. One question.
Ms. O'Brien.
If this is tabled until July, how does that impact implementation for students in the fiscal year 18?
President Fisher, Ms. O'Brien, actually next year is the year that our schools are mainly doing needs assessment of their campus staff, technology, scheduling, and it really is that planning year for the campuses that have not yet moved forward with computer education, computer science education. So it won't put us too far back at all.
Okay. Thank you, Mrs. Galligan.
Any remaining questions? No. Ms. Frank, if you would like to amend your motion, you're welcome.
So I would like to amend my motion to table the discussion on the coding program until the June 27th, no, July, excuse me,
July 11th.
July 11th governing board meeting.
Can I get a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Go ahead, bring it back.
Okay, moving on to old business 7B. I move that the governing board accept the administration's recommendation and approve the certified negotiated language tentative agreement number 66 for 2017-18.
Second.
Ms. Moffett?
President Fisher, governing board members, based on our discussion with you at the last governing board meeting, we did make an adjustment, and I believe you have that handout in front of you for the certified agreement or tentative agreement for section 23. There were questions regarding the DVEA president's salary and the way that that was worded. So we made an adjustment for your consideration. You'll see that D2, there was the original recommendation listed there, and underneath it, we have revised it to read, the DVEA president will receive salary adjustments in the same manner in which a full-time certificated teacher receives salary adjustments. And just as a reminder, there were questions about the 25 and 75%, and you'll see the details of that noted in number 1.
Does anyone have any questions other than me? No? Okay, and actually my question is kind of for Ms. Ordway because she's been on the board longer. One thing that I would like to, as we do have a lot of, this is a thick, I mean, we have a very small sample here, and there's a lot of language in these manuals that are probably just housekeeping rules, and we need to clean them up. If we vote for it now, is there anything that we need to change in the motion that would make it to where we cannot do another mid-year review? What I would like to do is for us to actually, as we plan study sessions, move into the new year with Dr. Finch. Of course, we have to have what we have in place so that we can move forward into the year. But if we have a study session maybe mid-year with our DVA, and all of us together and kind of make sure we look at it and just see if there's anything, I mean, I know we cleaned up some of the copies that have to be given and some of that type of language, but cleaning it up so that we can trim it down to a reasonable document so that a new teacher could read it in a reasonable amount of time and not be overwhelmed by it. If we vote for it, is there anything that precludes us from just bringing it back that you know of?
I would think that we could bring anything back, but I think for an employee group, whichever one it is, that if we vote on what their negotiated language is that they've negotiated for the following year, that we honor that negotiated language unless there's something that legally changes. I would say that at some point in time, we could sit down with the negotiation, the representatives, but I don't feel, as a board member, it is our position to help them along in deciding what they want to negotiate. I do believe it is our role to help them look at the book to make sure that we don't have archaic, old, and useless items in it.
That's more of what I'm referring to. Yeah, I have no desire to renegotiate what you negotiate, and I'm going to make the same request on the next book. It has nothing to do with us renegotiating. That's not our role.
But I just don't want to ask for another study session tonight because my head is going to blow up.
Yeah, no, this study session will not be tonight. It'll be mid-year. So just so as long as we're good with us doing that in the future, and I see a nod from Maria, so. Then we don't need to change the motion. So we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Moving on to old business item 7C, I move that the governing board accept the administration's recommendation and approve the classified negotiated language tentative agreement number 66 for 2017-18.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
I do have a question.
Okay, we have a question
Sorry.
on this one, sorry.
Jenna, and I just need you to explain the difference to me. And I apologize for not emailing it earlier, but in section 18B, it talks about staff development, criteria for obtaining salary incentive pay. It gives you all that information that says 5 incentive credits is an increase of 10 cents per hour increase, 100 credits, a lifetime max of $2. So what is the rationale behind that? I'm just wondering, because if does that apply to if you're well, just explain the rationale to me.
All right, I'm sorry.
It just seems very low to me that if somebody is going out and getting certified in different areas, that is going to enhance their value to our district, that they may stay in the same pay grade, but they're not being, in my, what I'm looking at, it doesn't seem that they're being rewarded to going out and getting that expertise as we do for certified.
The question is the value.
I think I understand you're just asking about the amount.
Correct.
That's just been the way it has been for a very long time. It got changed, oh my gosh, maybe 10 years ago. It used to be 35 cents, and now it's for 15 credits and something. I can't remember exactly what it was, but it has the opinion of, is it high enough? I mean, I've heard that often. That's just been the language. It hasn't been something that the team has selected to review, and maybe it's something we look into for next year if there's interest in raising that, but that has been the practice for a very long time. So they get 1 credit, or I'm sorry, I don't even have the language in front of me, but they get, they get, for every 5 credits, they get 10 cents on the next cycle, the next contract.
Right. I was just wondering, and I'm not saying that we need to do it. It just seemed like that it wouldn't be called an incentive because it seems so low, and it may not make that much difference to an individual employee. Thank you.
Already voted, but if we're
Aye.
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 Item 7D, I move that the governing board accept the administration's recommendation to approve the purchase from Frontline Technologies per RFP number 17-004-5 for a contract of an integrated system which includes absence management, applicant tracking, HR management, employee performance evaluation, and professional development systems for fiscal year 2017-18 with optional annual renewal for 4 additional years through fiscal year 2022.
Second.
Ms. Jenna? No changes?
No additional information.
Okay. So does anybody have questions on the system? No? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so
I don't think we moved
no,
anything.
okay, we didn't make any changes. I move that the governing board accept the administration's recommendation to approve consent agenda items 8A through 8J.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Oh, can we just clap for whatever changes were in there, because I think we have somebody that waited, an assistant principal maybe from Boulder Creek, that just wanted to be
Oh.
clapped.
Is there an assistant principal over there?
And I think there might be a couple others. Nelson?
Oh, you're right, it is.
Not there yet.
Okay,
Congratulations,
we're not there
Brittany.
yet,
Not there
just
yet.
FYI.
Oh, sorry
Dr. V
about
just
that.
We
pointed
take that all
out.
back.
Oh,
We
that's
take it
the
all
next
back.
agenda. You gotta stay
Sorry,
now,
James, I got too
sorry.
excited. Got too
All right,
excited.
take it back, take it back. There, okay.
Brittany, would you
The
have
happy
Brittany sit
part.
down?
Brittany, make Brittany sit down. Hold her.
I'm just looking for the happy part too soon.
No, it's not on the consent agenda.
No,
It's on
because
the
we
organization.
wait.
Okay, I'm just looking through my, don't mind me, I'm just
Can I
going
make it?
through all of the papers.
Can I help?
Yes, go ahead and help.
Building suspense, Ms. Frank?
Yes, that's exactly what I'm doing. Are we on action item 9A?
Correct.
Okay, action item 9A, at last. I move that the governing board accept the administration's recommendation to approve the human resources changes.
Oh, I'll second. We seconded.
Okay, the Ann's seconded. They both did at the same time. So, you know. We don't generally discuss our human resource changes, but if Miss Jenna, if you would like to tell us about our,
I would love to introduce
Brittany.
you to
We need to
Brittany
vote.
over
We need to
there.
vote.
She
Sorry.
has been
Wait.
serving as the Boulder Creek High School TOA, and she's done a fabulous job in that capacity. Prior to that, I believe chemistry teacher over at Boulder Creek High School, and she is excited, and I know the team is as well, to have her and her expertise on that campus as a capacity as an assistant principal. Boulder Creek. Congratulations, Brittany.
that's, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Brittany, now if you could stand up and let us all welcome you as the new AP. And we decide that you guys are going to be the two Bs, because Brittany.
B&B. Kind of like Burt's Bees.
There you go, Burt's Bees. Let's go
All
ahead.
right, so we've already voted on 9B, so moving on to action item 9C. I move that the governing board accept the administration's recommendation to consider and, if deemed advisable, adopt a resolution authorizing the sale of tax anticipation notes on behalf of the district.
Second.
Okay, Jim, are you going to review TANs for the board, or does anybody have questions on what a TANs is?
I have no questions on that.
No questions? All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Jim, you're off the hook. All right, action item 9D until the budget study session. Then you're back on the hook. Action item 9D, I move that the governing board accept the administration's recommendation to approve the 2017-18 salary schedules.
Second.
Okay, any conversation? I believe this is just taking our prior recommendation and throwing it into these charts. No discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I could try to give it to you.
Item 9E, I move that the governing board accept the administration's recommendation to approve the 2017-18 contract language for exempt 10 positions.
Second.
Any questions? We've reviewed this a lot. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Item 9, I believe it's F. I move that the governing board approve performance pay for the Deer Valley Unified School District Superintendent, Dr. James R. Weitenheimer.
Second.
Oh, okay.
Oh.
I'm sorry, I'm missing important details.
Yes, you did.
It's late. At 95%.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Moving on to 10A.
I think it's B.
It's
Thought you got
10B,
rid of B.
we
Oh, you're
tabled
right.
10A.
You're right, we tabled
and
10A.
parts
So
of
let's go
10C.
on to 10B, the preview of classroom site fund. Jim, I'm assuming?
President Fisher, members of the board, Dr. Weitenheimer. So this is a preview of the Classroom Site Fund. This is a plan we do annually. So we typically preview it the first meeting in June and then ask for the board to formally consider it in the second meeting in June. With that, this is the current year plan, 2016-2017, just as reference. So this information is available to you. The allocation per weighted student count was $332 per weighted student count for the current year. And there are three categories of the Classroom Site Fund. There's the base salary category, Fund 11. Fund 12 is the performance pay category, and then Fund 13 happens to be the menu money item. And as you will note in this year, just over 72% of Fund 13's allocation was in teacher salaries. That includes two components of this, 41.8% of the total, which has been memorialized since I think the Classroom Site Fund started in Deer Valley, and it is 41.8%. It's not rounded. It's that number has is ingrained in my mind and will probably never be forgotten. Plus a fixed dollar amount of $1,574,000. The combination of those two made up the 72%. So for fiscal year 18, again, this is the draft plan because it is a preview. The per pupil amount, we're building the plan based on $367 per weighted student count. So just as a reminder, last year's plan $332, this year's plan $367. There's an additional $19. This is hard enough to read by itself, but there is a note at the bottom of that that actually speaks to the $19 per weighted student count. That amount was approved as part of the salary recommendation that the board approved on May 9th. That'll be paid in a one-time payment to our eligible teachers at the same time that their performance pay is paid in a one-time check to them. So it'll be paid out to the teachers, and it will happen. Typically, we do the performance pay in June of at the end of the plan, if you will. Other than the allocation changing, we also have an increase in the fixed dollar amount for teachers in Fund 13, or the menu money. That was also part of the salary recommendation that was approved by the board on May 9th, which included an increase for extending or adding additional 7th and 8th grade teaching positions in math and science to the hard-to-fill addenda in 7th and 8th grade, as well as increasing the salary increase for teachers to make it a complete 1.5% between M&O and Classroom Site Fund, as well as Instructional Improvement Fund proceeds for teachers for this year. So that provides kind of an overview of the three different funds in the plan. I did provide what the breakdown was here so you could see that a little bit in more detail. And so we are increasing the percentage to just over 75%, 76.5%, adding the teacher base salary, the 41.8%, and now the fixed dollar amount is just under $2 million. The balance of that is being attributed to district initiatives, which are state assessment interventions, $1.3 million, and teacher development at $804,000. There's a note at the bottom of this where we are allocating 113.8% because we are expecting $825,000 worth of carry forward, which has to remain within each of the identified funds. So that $825,000 is a cumulative carry forward over multiple years, but that's why we're able to allocate more than 100% of the allocation. So just some highlights. This does take into account the increase in the Classroom Site Fund allocation, as I mentioned. Does incorporate the salary recommendation, which includes the one-time payment for the one-time Classroom Site Fund allocation that we'll get next year. Does include the salary raise that was approved, as well as the addenda, as I mentioned previously. And as I mentioned, the percentage goes to 76.5%, and for comparative purposes, that was 72.3% in fiscal year 17. And then just as a note, fiscal year 21 is the last year of the Classroom Site Fund funding, unless an initiative would provide for it to be replaced by something. It actually sunsets. That's what was in the original approval from the voters. It was a 20-year initiative. So I'd be happy to answer any questions. Oh, and I also provided not only the presentation for you this evening, but the detail of the breakdown of the state assessment intervention and teacher development on a separate sheet, which was previously provided to you. But just in case there were any questions, I wanted to have that available to you as a reference. And I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Comment? I just want to thank you very much for all the information, especially this piece of paper right here that separates everything and makes it individualized. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Don't see any. Let's move on to the next item. We're on our first reading, but we're skipping. Yeah, so if you can. Who's running the show? So if you can zip through the first 4 and stop at 5.
Sorry, I had everybody lined up to take their own, and I missed my opportunity. This policy, BGD, is an ASBA recommended policy. First of all, let me just tell you that all of the policies that we will look at tonight have been reviewed by legal counsel. When they review, they don't judge whether they think it's good or bad. They just make sure that it's not illegal. So they even look on our behalf at ASBA recommended language, because you might have noticed on ASB recommended language they say this is not your legal review, get your own. And so we have done that. In this particular case, Board Review of Regulations, the ASB recommendation is both recommended by us as well as thumbed up by our legal counsel. You can see, what we've tried to do is to give you a little guide on what happened. They just removed a little bitty portion of what they consider to be unnecessary wording. They didn't change anything. They just made it easier to read. Unless we hear otherwise, we're going to go to the next one. Is that okay?
Questions? Nope. Go to the next one.
All right. We are going now past 6 to 7 DIE audits and financial monitoring.
So this one falls within our area. This is a very minor change. It is an ASBA recommended language policy, but it just adds a reference to the Office of Management and Budget Compliance to an existing policy that we have.
Questions? Nope. All right.
Jim, DJE.
DJE, and we've reviewed this policy on a number of occasions. This is affectionately referred to as our purchasing policy. It is not the ASBA recommended language because we specifically don't include the dollar thresholds. We just reference the state bid thresholds. In case the bid thresholds were ever to change, we wouldn't have to bring the policy back to you. We've had some discussions about that in the past. And because what the change was asking for is just a reference to a preference for minority owned businesses, we left the bid threshold unchanged, but that takes out the copyright provision of this policy because we're using our own policy. We did incorporate the recommended changes for the minority businesses. And again, as Dr. Weitenheimer mentioned, the policy was reviewed by our attorney as well and recommended for the board to consider.
We'll remove the copyright. Any other questions? Okay, move on to the
EEAG.
So the next two policies, I kind of combined it into one slide here because they are related to each other. This is an ASBA recommended language policy, so it does have the ASBA copyright, and it just includes some language about an employee and or governing board member using a private vehicle for business.
Okay, does anyone have questions as to what this is?
All right, Jim, policy EFDA, collection of money and food tickets.
So this should be noted that this is not the ASBA approved language, but it is language that has been circulated amongst our food and nutrition colleagues, so other districts. And this has to do with specifically how we address unpaid meal charges. And so we are incorporating the reference that is recommended in the policy advisory from ASBA, but we have changed the language slightly because we we have a different approach to unpaid meal charges and that practice. And so it does not follow suit with the ASBA language due to our practice. And it should be noted that our practice is being shared with our neighboring school districts, and so there's a lot of discussion about this, as there have been some media reports related to uncharged meals of late, and so this has been a hot topic.
On to the next one.
We skip the next one and we go to 13, which is website accessibility. This is a new policy. Monica has been working with legal counsel on this one. It's recommended by ASBA and concurred through Monica and our legal counsel.
Okay. Go ahead and go on to the next one.
JFABD, admission of homeless students.
This policy follows Arizona School Board recommendations, and it is revised to allow school districts to give enrollment preference to children who are in foster care or who meet the definition of unaccompanied youth.
If you'll roll to that policy on the screen. Thank you. All right, hearing nothing. Policy JFB, open enrollment.
Recently, the governing board has looked at this policy and approved it. If you recall, our policy does not match ASBA's recommendation because it is more detailed and extensive. They have made a recommendation to add some changes based on statute changes. So we had this policy legally reviewed, and what you see in front of you is what has been recommended, a universal option for us should they change statute at any time. This would cover that.
This is just a little statement at the bottom.
It will be a
Is that what
statement at
that
the
is?
very bottom of the policy.
Okay. You know, I mean, I understand the reason we're adding that and the purpose of it, but if at any point the law does change and we need to reword it, even though this covers us, I'm assuming that will still be brought back to us so we can make official changes in the body. If
Sorry,
there
I
were
couldn't
anything that
hear
we
you.
would need to adjust. Because, I mean, we want to,
We
Rather,
would consider it because ASBA would send it to us as a change, right? So
Okay.
we would get it, yes.
so they would send it, even though we're not 100% with what ASBA has.
And Ms. Fisher, in this specific recommendation, we could make that change now. There is one specifically to discipline, a student that has received discipline in another district, whether or not we would be able to keep them from open enrolling or enrolling in one of our campuses. And so we could do that specifically in that area rather than using this language.
I think we need to give every child a chance, even if they've made a mistake in the past. So I'd rather not do that, but that's my take on it. So, okay.
We
No
can
other-
bring that back to you with that language instead,
With which language?
with the revision to that section rather than a catch-all at the
No.
end.
Oh, no,
We're
I
saying we
think
want
she
a
wants to leave
catch-all
it as this
Because
is.
we want to be able to, if there is a student that has, we just want to be able to use discretion, as long as it's not a violent crime or something like that. I mean, every student deserves a chance.
Okay.
And so,
Policy JL, student wellness.
any questions?
ASBA recommended.
Yeah, so this is just a reference, again, and it is following ASBA's recommended language. It's just a reference that we're adding for the unpaid meal charges that was previously discussed in EFDA.
I don't see any questions. If you want to move on to the next one.
JLCC, communicable infectious diseases.
This one simply reflects changes in Arizona Administrative Code as it relates to lice infestations.
Oh, yeah. Gross, now they don't send you home.
Okay, I don't think anybody wants to talk about
All
this
right,
one.
we will
right?
pass
I'm
through
sorry.
that one.
Wait, I actually do have a
Wait,
question.
okay,
I
no,
apologize.
Miss O'Brien does want to talk about this one.
So the change is that the student may return before being free of lice.
President Fisher, Ms. O'Brien, that would be correct, but there is some specific criteria that a child would need to meet. But yes, that is true.
And is this based on a statute or?
They changed it because so many kids were missing school due to
correct.
lice.
Yeah, they were,
Sweetie,
because
you're
you treat
correct.
the kids, but there's not a
Broken
guarantee that
elementary
they're
school.
clear. So you know, if they have, what is it called, the
nits?
the resistant lice or the nits or what have you. There's not a guarantee unless you hold a child out of school for over 7 days. You can treat a child. You have to keep them out of school for 7 days because any nits could hatch. And so the purpose is that they want to make sure, and I'm sure there's a protocol to retreat and whatnot. I mean, I assisted a family who found themselves in this situation, and it's very difficult for them, but it's also very difficult for the child that they can't stay out of school for 7 days to wait.
They don't
So they
have-
treat them, they watch them, they treat them, they watch them, and I'm sure precautionary is taken so that they're not head to head with another kid, don't share a brush, that kind of stuff.
I'll send my additional questions to Dr. Galligan. Thank you.
The next policy is policy JR on student records.
Policy JR has simply been revised to meet revised text and legal requirements from ESSA in 2015.
And policy JRR, student surveys.
This one is per ASBA language, other than we removed any reference to charter schools. And the gist of it, it just added and included a list of student family characteristics as per ARS 15177.
And Jim, if you will go to one more slide. There is a policy LBD, which has been deleted at ASBA's recommendation. So there's it's not on your list because it's going away. Relations to charter school, removed. The charter schools haven't been removed, but the policy related to them.
Okay.
That concludes the preview section of tonight's meeting, and so President Fisher,
Okay.
public comments are complete, and we're
Comments are complete. We have the future meetings are posted. Yep, they're posted. Can I get a motion to adjourn this meeting?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we're gonna take at least a personal needs 7-minute break, and then we will resume with our budget study session. Minors. Legal signature.
And that's Curtis's
Contract. Legal signatures.
Well, I don't feel so special tonight then. Oh, now I feel special. Well, I got more to sign.
What is this a resolution for? Oh, TANs. No, but if you promise to give this back, I will. No, she needs blue anyways.
I don't have one in my drawer.
No? Jenny, this is just you and I.
Thank you.
Does it need does what she's signing need blue signature?
Actually this, but it's not working.
Do you need blue? Does yours say it's signing?
Does it say blue? Yeah.
Some do, yeah.
Okay, so
this is
here's
black.
this one.
This is black, is that okay?
No, sign them both. Is there anything else for me to sign, Kim?
Okay, I'll give you this.
As long as she returns it, I'll let her live.
And And I got all your vouchers signed the other day. I'm sorry I didn't get in sooner.
Okay, it says it's, oh, that's their president. This is our president.
I think I got all of these. You might want to double check for me. Is there anything else over there I need to sign?
I don't believe so.
Okay.
He's got my name on it. James, is this? I see it, never mind. Okay, don't let Darcy run off with my pen. Okay, do you want it dated? Okay. Once during the conference, I was going to that doesn't say that.
I will.
Thank you very much. Glad you came tonight.
Glad to see you.
Dr. V said he would walk me out. I think my kids are okay with that. They were just scared. My kids are afraid for my safety. Also, if we're paying him anyways, then let him stay. You know, I don't know. It just depends if we're going to have anything. Oh, okay. I just keep it in my purse because I don't want to leave. I call the special meeting of the governing board to order. Let the record show all members are present again. Can I get a motion to adopt the agenda?
I move that we adopt the agenda.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Aye.
Aye. Study session. Jim, go.
President Fisher, members of the board, Dr. Weitenheimer. I appreciate the opportunity this evening to have this session, and I know that we have just completed several other meetings, so I want to be certainly appreciative of the opportunity to present tonight, but also be respectful of the hour and the amount of time that has already been committed this evening. With that, I think the goal that I have for this evening is just to hopefully provide an idea or provide an understanding to the governing board as to what steps are necessary for us to adopt our expenditure budget for next year. And there are a couple points of interest of things that we have discussed in previous sessions that I think we just want to make sure that we have an understanding of what direction we should go in terms of moving forward, because we really have only the opportunity to propose the budget to the governing board on the 27th and then adopt it or consider adopting it on July 11th in order to meet the statutory timeline. If not, we will not have a budget in place for next year. So I don't mean to be an alarmist. I'm just trying to present to you that we have a timeline here, that we need some additional input, or just at least an understanding of where we're at. So with that, this evening, I'm going to give you a budget overview. We do have a new version of the budget to present this evening. The last version that we presented was dated May 9th, so we have now a June 13th version that we'll share with you. We will talk about the reclassification and new staffing. That has not changed. We don't have any new information to share with the board, but the previous time that we presented this, there was a great deal of discussion in regards to that. We'll talk about capital, and we'll talk about the teacher-specific legislative pay and what we have to do in regards to that. That's the 1.06%. I know nothing can be easy, right? 41.8, 1.06. I mean, there's always a lot of numbers in our, if there's not numbers, there's an acronym, right? And then finally, next steps. And I think what's important to note is we're trying to build a budget that the board will consider. So we don't want to include anything that I will call is toxic, that the board would not want to have included. And but we're not asking for approval. So for example, on the reclassifications, if we don't, or even the new positions, it doesn't matter. If the governing board is not in agreement with any of the reclassifications, we can certainly include them in the budget, as we have, and when we get to the overview, I'll mention that. But it's not the final approval of those reclassifications. Those would happen during an HR changes, right? So you would get an HR change for any of the reclassifications, and the board could then make a decision. The budget is merely just the plan for how we see revenues and expenditures, how they're going to be realized in the upcoming year. So, I just don't want this to get confused. We have to have a budget approved, and it does provide the framework for us to operate within, but it is not the formal approval of something, and that can happen in a subsequent venue, and in fact will, as I just alluded to in the reclassifications and any new staffing, because all of those decisions do come before the board in the form of HR changes. So again, the budget's not the approval of it, but we don't want to put something in that the board collectively doesn't think should be included in our plans for next year. All right, so with that, I'll kind of race through these slides again, just because some of this is very repetitive. I'm listing all the revenue changes here. The last bullet is new. We will include results-based funding for schools. That will be based on testing information that is embargoed, and so we don't know exactly what that looks like. So we'll be estimating this It is not an insignificant amount of money if we base it on the previous year, so fiscal year 16 data would have us awarded more than $1 million for 6 schools. And so we'll be estimating a number in results-based funding into this budget, and we will get that information in, when the data is no longer embargoed. On the expense side, there's no changes here to what we previously presented. Again, back to that May 9th version of the official version of the budget. So no new information here, and does include the teacher-specific pay, which is really kind of we show it on the revenue side and it comes in on the expense side. One of the last things that we added to this, but again, it was on that same slide last time we talked about this. This slide is new. So we show the revenue changes, and these are changes, right? So just kind of trying to get a lay of the land. So $1.7 million is what we're projecting in reduction of students. That is both Group A and Group B weights. So Group A are the actual head counts of students. We're projecting that at about 1%. And Group B are the weights for special needs and other additional expenses, additional revenue that we receive for certain parts of the state funding formula. The special needs population falls in that category, along with several others. The inflation increase at $2 million is unchanged. There is an increase to the M&O override, and I'll get into that in a little bit more detail, but that is a result of the teacher-specific legislative pay. It's not being added to the base support level, but it is being added to the revenue control limit. I know these are technical terms, so I did not use the BSL and RCL and expect you to know what that means, but that means that our M&O override is going to be able to be increased by the increase for the teachers, which gives us some additional money to consider. So net revenue changes, $3.8 million to the good. Oh, I'm sorry, I failed to mention the carry forward does include the most current number, but that's as of May. And again, that's been trending in a positive light year over year, but just the month over month was just really significantly unchanged. On the expenditure side, several changes in this, in some of the dollar amounts. Again, the teacher-specific legislative pay is an estimate, but it shows on the revenue side as well as the expense side as the exact same dollar amount. So the net number that we have is about $100,000 amongst friends at $99,700 to the good. So that leaves some opportunity for us to look at other options of what that money could be used for. And as a suggestion, if we can't agree on what some of those dollars can be, it can be included in our contingency. Again, with current year funding, we're not exactly 100% sure on the revenue side. It's not as certain as it has been in previous years. I'll just leave it at that. But there are some opportunities that we may want to look at as well. I do believe that the carry forward amount would provide some additional potential in revenue, but it's not another $1 million. It's, it might double that number. So we may go from $100,000 to $200,000, or just slightly under $200,000, based on an estimate of projected M&O carry forward. Just as a reminder, here are all the levers that we pulled to make all that happen. So we are foregoing the CTE textbook adoption. We've already projected an increase in carry forward. I'm suggesting that we could see maybe even another $100,000 of projected carry forward when we get done with this month. The cash accounts that we're utilizing, the additional MIPS money, and the reduction of capital allocation. So $2.6 million is already baked into the numbers I just shared with you. Here is the list of options that the negotiated solutions team looked at. And our priority 2, 3, and 4 have been included through other means. Priority 5 would be the next item on the list at $225,000. I don't believe that we would be able to afford that, even though it was ranked as the highest priority by the NST. But there is a potential that we may end up with enough money to be able to afford priority number 6, $139,700 for the front office staffing. And as a reminder, that's the front office staffing that was recommended by a work team that's spent a considerable amount of time coming up with that recommendation. This guarantees a certain staffing level at, and I'm oversimplifying this, but it guarantees a certain staffing level at our high schools. So I'll pause right here just because there certainly is an opportunity to include an option from this list or another option that the board might see as a priority due to the projected $100,000 or slightly more than $100,000 with my projected carry forward as an opportunity for being able to include something in the proposed budget.
I have a question.
Any discussion about that?
Ms. Hardaway?
I was, do you have the front office recommendations someplace close? Because I do remember, I want to make sure that it's the one where principals and assistant principals would be sharing a secretary depending upon student population at the high school level. I just want to make sure that I've got the right one.
So this particular option is Title I school enrollment criteria for additional staffing is reduced by 100 students. It affects 6 elementary and middle schools. It also affects 1 high school and a minimum of 1.0 FTE AP secretary per AP assistant principal staffed at each high school. That affects 2 of the high schools. So the combination of those 2 options. So it affects Title I elementary and middle schools and high schools, as well as create a guarantee of one assistant principal secretary for each assistant principal at each of the high schools.
Okay, and that was something that was important to both the BLT, the DVUSD, and I don't remember, Maria, what if there was anything from DVEA, but I know it was important to those 2. Is that correct? Am I remembering that right, Jim?
Correct. So it was, again, ranked as the number 6 priority with the negotiated solutions team. So there was a discussion amongst the NST in regards to it, and it ranked very high on the list, I'll say, and all the employee groups participated in that. Ms. Tweed.
Okay, I guess I'm confused, because then at the last session, did you say these weren't ranked by the groups? They were written in no specific order, or they were ranked by the groups? Because I'm here. Are these in priority order that the groups voted on, or are these in a random order?
Ms. Tweedy, they are prioritized as the negotiated solutions team presented them. So that column on to the far left is what the NST prioritized these as.
Okay, so you're saying that the whole team agreed that this was a number 6 priority and it was more important than the items below it?
That is correct.
And you guys all voted on this together? Because that isn't what I've heard from the NST team. So I don't know if you all agreed that the same prioritization happened.
So I don't know that a formal vote took place. So we had our debrief with the NST this afternoon. So there wasn't a formal vote that was taken, but everybody participated in ranking each of those. So there was no formal vote that was taken. And one of the things that came from the debrief today was that the actual bylaws of the employee associations require them to ratify any decision. So I don't even know that a vote would have been able to been had if it weren't for something that could be ratified by the employee groups. Okay. I'm speaking specifically of the Teachers Association, DVEA.
Since this is a study session, Maria's, if you want to provide your input.
Yes, thank you, President Fisher. So I was discussing this with DVESD, but to the best of our recollection, it was more of a round robin. So it was DVESPA, DVEA, BLT, district, and we just kind of went around, what's your first priority, and we went that way, and that's how this list was created. But we as a group as a whole never voted on this is priority 1 or this is priority 2. It was done in a round robin sort of way, sort of playground pick, to the best of my and DeVespa's recollection.
Can I don't really know what that means. I hear Jim saying that you're precluded from taking a vote because that's something you can't do. So if you're having a discussion that goes around a table, and I don't know, Steve, were you there? Dennis, you were there? So everybody gets to say what they say, and if someone said, I think number 6 is or whatever number 6 is called, front office staffing, should be at the very bottom, then you would have remembered someone saying that should be at the very bottom. I mean, you do have some kind of agreements, right?
Yes. My recollection is we put them down in the order that we were prioritizing things, not necessarily voting on them, but we were prioritizing.
So basically what you're saying is that you did have basic consensus of the team, that this is our order and this is where we're putting it, kind of like a
Yes.
consensus. Yeah, we just agree, this is our order. Even if it's not voted on. Yep.
We don't, okay, the question, to answer your question, we don't disagree. It's kind of fuzzy on how we got to this, how the NST priority came to be.
Absolutely, it's a study session, so
I'm
anyone
trying
who
to
wishes
understand what I'm deciding, so I would like to.
Get along pretty good. My name's Steve Lund. Thank you for listening. We went through these, from my recollection, we talked about all of the different ideas, and there was more than this that was on a list that was brought to us from different groups. These are the ones that we kind of took it down and drew a line and said if it was ever possible that these would be the things that we would want to consider. You can see 10 and 11, the other two 0.25% increases for pay. We put those down a little lower, not because we didn't think we wanted them, but because we did think that maybe there were some other things that should be considered also with staffing and different other items on there. So it wasn't voted on that this was the order. It was just kind of agreed that these are the things we want to see on there for things we want to talk about if there was monies available when we get to a better idea of where our budget is. So if we got to a point where we could take all the way down through number 12, those were the items that we put on a list that if we could afford all of those things, we would want to at least draw the line there. If we could get all the way down to number 11 to get another 0.5% raise for everybody, we wanted to get there. But there was a kind of a give and take on needs for the district besides just salary.
Okay, so would you say though, if, for example, we found a little more money,
yeah,
you would want to see number 5 funded before number 6 and number 6 funded before number 8? That's what I'm trying to understand, and all the employee groups think this.
In our discussion today, in our debrief today, the conversation about those items was if there was $225,000 available, that's a good one to go to. If there's only $180,000 or $150,000 available, then how do you pick number 5 when you don't have the money for it? If you have the money for number 6, then maybe we need to just flip those because that's what funding would be available to be a benefit to the district. So it wasn't necessarily that we don't want something higher. It was if the funding is available, where do we go with it? You could almost take the numbers off of those and just say these are other items that we were considering. That might be a more fair way to say that.
It looks to me like you put them in, these are our rank of what we would like, but if we can't afford this, then we can leapfrog the next one type thing, is what I'm hearing you saying.
Whatever funds are available, figure out what it is we want.
I mean, you'd like to have the whole
fund.
list if we had the funds available.
And I say number 6, I mean, it could be, it could be number 8. I mean, I'm not picking one. We didn't pick one, but it was what things are maybe more valuable to the district than other things. Those are our ideas from everybody that we talk to.
Well, I guess like for an example then, number 7 and number 9. And you would say
kind of, yeah, you can kind of see in the.
I'm just
oh,
trying to
sorry.
understand.
Mhm.
Not really what we would
Yeah.
want to use.
Right.
Right, so the first three, the number two, if we're using that number two was everybody in the room agreed that that should happen. I mean, all three and four, again, that's classroom site fund. Proposition 206 would have been DVESPA. Yeah, we all agreed on that. 7th and 8th grade, level science and math hard to fill. I think that was an interest from all the groups in the room. The additional school-based administrative support, that was a BLT interest. Front office staffing was that also BLT?
That was a committee.
That was committee consent, yeah.
Michelle Benson was on that committee.
That's a classified interest. The nursing compensation hard to fill was a certified interest. Equitable performance pay, again, a certified interest. Lunch monitor time, a classified interest. Salary increases would have been all employee groups.
Yeah.
And the final 2.0 FTE, I think, was a district interest. District, admin, person representing district. So if maybe in the future, if we want to label, maybe, what groups brought this interest
Well,
forward, I don't know.
It's kind of hard for us. I don't believe it was ever our intent to give we have to be in this order. It was, these are things that we're bringing to the discussion for what ifs, if we have some money available, what can we put it to that's going to be a benefit to the district? So as I said a minute ago, at least in my opinion, perhaps numbering them was the wrong way to approach that. Maybe there just should have been
Letters.
a dash for items, but if you have $150,000 available, it's kind of hard to spend $225,000. So
Okay.
trying to find ways to put it towards something that would be beneficial.
Perfect. Excellent. Thank you very much.
Ms. O'Brien?
Mr. Miglerino, the current net change that you reflect is a little less than 100,000. Said that might increase potentially to 200,000. Is that what you said during the presentation?
President Fisher, Ms. O'Brien, yes, I believe it has the potential to increase. I think $200,000 might be a little bit
Optimistic?
a little bit too optimistic.
Okay.
But certainly, I think it's going to increase slightly from that, yes.
Okay. This year we experienced a decline in enrollment, and we are anticipating another decline in enrollment, yet I realize that those numbers are iffy. Do you believe we need this in the contingency for a potentially higher decline in enrollment than we're projecting?
So when we get to the capital page, I did not include a crystal ball in our requests.
I was just looking for a best guess.
But being more serious, we have included in our plans a 1% reduction in student enrollment. And as we just mentioned during the regular meeting, we were at 0.7%. So I think that we have a provision in there. But in the event that we end up with a loss greater than 1%, then we will need more contingency. But we will also make some staffing adjustments as can be implemented.
Okay, but you do feel the 1% is a fairly conservative guesstimate?
Correct.
With your crystal ball?
Correct.
Thank you, sir.
It's not working. Right, it's broken crystal ball. And you had planned on 1% before. I believe I saw the 1% in the last projections. We were at 0.7 instead. So it's kind of consistent with a trend that you've seen?
Correct. We felt we had two options. One is we could estimate a more realistic number. Maybe it was going to be 0.5% or 0.75%. But then we would want to increase the contingency in our budget, which is only at $200,000 as it stands currently. And we elected to reduce the anticipated number of students and build the budget based on that. Either way would have netted the same number.
Yes, Ms. Tweedy.
Going back to that page of what the different employee groups have requested, I would still, and I guess I would like to say it again, I think if we have any money in the budget geared at program expansion, it should be applied here first before we look at expanding any programs. And if we are going to expand programs, that money that those programs be funded by reducing a program that's already in existence to fund that, so that it wouldn't cost extra money. I think one of the other things that concerns me is I have requested in the past that we look at ways of maybe reducing travel to fund some of these. And we're on one hand, we're saying, well, if we approve it, we're not necessarily approving those expenses, you know, for different things. But in the case of travel, we are, because that's not being brought before the board. So if we're approving travel in this budget and we don't reduce it and it doesn't come in front of the board, we're basically saying, by all means, travel and don't fund these things. And I don't necessarily know that I would agree with that. I mean, I would want to, so I guess that would be my other concern with this.
Well, I guess the one thing I would want to say is travel isn't necessarily just a line item. I mean, travel is generally taken out of a budget for training or development, or depending on what it is. And one of the items, one of the policies that we are bringing forward is if the board so wishes, is to add board approval for all out-of-state travel, so that the board does have that ability to look at those
Is that
things.
coming forward before we approve the budget?
Well, no, but I'm just saying either way, when you start, there's not a line item that says travel and we reduce
Well, I
this, we
understand
add
that, but if
there.
if we're paying for travel out of funds that could go towards some of this, we actually are approving. So without knowing, if it doesn't come from the board, we actually are approving that. And if that policy is not coming before the board before we approve the budget, then we are approving that.
But there wouldn't be, what I'm saying is there's not a line item of travel. There's a line item of professional development. So if they're not traveling, it would still be professional development, whether they had someone come here and did it or what have you.
If some of those funds could be used to fund some of this,
So you
and
wanna
we don't
reduce-
use it to fund some of this, then we're using it here. So that's my only point.
So I guess what we're looking at, so is there a line item for professional development that we can reduce to fund some of these?
We can't obviously. Professional, I mean, do you?
Travel generally does, yes. That's why I'm asking that question. I'm not being sarcastic. It generally is, you have a little bucket that's given to various departments or different things, and it's their professional development. Now, they can use it, I mean, and it just depends on how each district does it. They could use it for having a consultant come in here and they do it there, or they could travel to a conference. And I don't know what all the district does. I mean, it could be teachers, administrators, staff, what have you. And I'm not opposing you. I think we should definitely monitor travel, because we don't want to send, half the district halfway across the state when we could pay a quarter of that to have someone come here. I am agreeing with you.
Okay.
But that's it's not in a line item of travel, as far as I understand it. I've never seen a line item. So I guess that's what I'm.
President Fisher, so we do have a line item that is the discretionary funds that are assigned to a department, but it's at the department's discretion of how they use that money.
So,
Could I ask a question?
yes, Ms. Ordway.
So, do we have a process that we use when we are approving travel or even asking to go on travel, whether it be a supervisor, I don't know which levels we're talking about, but any level? And then is there a way that doesn't take an hour to, and if it's a short thing, maybe somebody could look it up, how much do we spend out of our discretionary funds on travel? And is travel defined as traveling away or paying for someone to come here or paying a fee? I don't know exactly what we're referring to with the travel, but if it's just going out, I mean, if it's us leaving, an employee leaving, what would the amount of that be, please? If that's helpful to getting to the
So
I'm trying to
we-
focus on what we're doing to see what answer we're looking for.
President Fisher, Ms. Ordway, so we previously disclosed that all travel, including conference registration, as well as travel, which includes in-district mileage reimbursements, because we code it to the same account for the district, is $789,629. Of that, from M&O, which is what we're talking about when we're talking about the M&O budget in the Gold Book, there is $254,991. Of that, $140,389 is registration costs, and $114,000 is employee travel, and $68,000 of that $114,000 is travel outside of mileage reimbursement for our itinerant staff. So teachers that have to drive from one location to another.
So our 0.4, 0.5, and all that, okay.
Right, so I know I just rattled off a whole bunch of numbers there, but so in M&O dollars, $68,000 is what we spend on out of mileage reimbursement travel in M&O. But I think Ms. Tweedy's comment was that collectively we are spending, almost $790,000 on travel, which includes in-district mileage reimbursement and travel outside of just a mileage reimbursement, as well as conference registrations.
And that's all levels?
All funds, all levels.
Okay, thank you, Jim.
And I think that's what we're more looking at, is what.
That travel doesn't come before the board, is some of that money, and it's not necessarily that I think I should have a decision over this, but I think it should certainly be discussed by the employee groups. Do you guys think this should be reduced to pay for some of this and still have some training? Like, is there a balance there? I'm just putting it on the table.
I've never heard of the employee groups determining what travel or training would be brought into the district.
Is there a way to reduce that and fund some of this? I mean, I think we could. That would just be my assumption.
And that's part of, I guess the first step is, for one, getting travel at least out of state travel before the board, which has never occurred in this district. It does in other districts, but it's never occurred in
But then
this
I think
one.
that should happen before we approve this.
But we can't, I guess I don't see how we can adjust an unknown. I get the point. We need to somehow try and get money to where we have to, but.
Ms. Fisher?
Yes. Ms.
Also,
Holden.
Jim, is there a way to delineate whether it's what fund it comes out of? So if the traveling is coming out of a campus because how? Oh, it is all right there. I'm sorry. It's all right there.
Well, and also in those numbers, do you have included like Title II training, things like that? Do you have title money in there? Do we have that even in this district? I've never looked.
President Fisher, yes, we do, and we can certainly provide that information again. The largest expense of the $790,000, $205,000 of it is Title I, which is there are some requirements that promote that, and
that's required.
and
It's
M&O.
statutory. Yeah, so some of that is statutory. We can't change that at all, so we couldn't move that into meeting any of these. I guess that's what I was trying to drive us towards, so that we, because we have to, what we as a board have to do tonight is give Mr. Miglerino where we're at, so that he can build our base budget. So we have to answer at least some of the basic questions.
I guess I'm asking for a question they would have to answer. Recommend reducing.
Did you guys look at recommendations of reductions in NST?
So President Fisher and Ms. Tweedy, the scope of the negotiated solutions team includes salary and benefit and working conditions.
Right.
So we did not specifically have a conversation regarding reducing travel to be able to support anything that was derived on the list.
That would generally be something.
And it might be more appropriate for you guys to have that discussion in cabinet, but is that a possibility to pay for some of this? I know that the schools are hurting without additional administrative support. I know the office staffing is an issue. I've heard a lot about the inequitable performance pay, nursing so I'm just saying, I think a lot of these things are important. Have we looked for ways to fund these? I bring them up at every budget session, and I'm not hearing any suggestions. I guess I'll just put it out there again.
I guess to answer the question, we have not found any way to fund these other than with the proceeds that we mentioned earlier. So that we think that there will be something a little bit north of $100,000 that has been unassigned currently, and would allow us an opportunity to at least select something from this list.
Jim, would you remind us all the dollars that were shifted from the classroom site fund in order to not pay for these things, but in order to get the raise, and where those that was I think in excess of $250,000. So
yes.
you're asking about things that we don't do anymore and shifts that we made. We did I would call a very substantial one of those in order to get to the 1.5% raise.
And it was just.
So we have been working on those things, Ms. Tweedy.
And that was about $400,000 of additional classroom site fund money that went towards specifically teacher raises.
Okay. Ms. O'Brien.
Is there more to the presentation that we need to hear?
Can you go over the last parts, because I don't want to get stuck on this page. I mean, I know if we can find the money to do things, we will, but we have to move forward with those deadlines in the USFR that say you have to have something to them. And if I'm not mistaken, us not getting our budget in is a potential issue where we get sanctioned and we get fines that come along with that type of issue as well, which then remove an additional couple $100,000 that we can't put in a budget.
Okay, so the next several pages have to do with the reclassifications and new staffing requests. These pages are not different from when we looked at this back in May. And so included on here are the reclassifications. I'll just briefly state that there are two different types of reclassifications that are presented here. Both they are process-driven, meaning that there is a process that we used to even consider these. The M&O impact is $23,338, and that has already been included in the numbers that we just previously talked about in the budget. So there are 6 trade positions in our facility staff and 3 IS&T tech positions that are displayed here. Again, this is not new information. These are prescribed processes that have been in place for decades that we are, in some cases, honoring decisions that were made as many as 7 years ago when it comes to our trade the positions in our facilities trades.
I think we understand at least the trades ones, the apprentice programs. We've been given a ton of information. We've been, that truly shows if you do this, we do this, they go through a training, they do that, and it's the 1%. I have absolutely no problem personally with moving forward with the facilities trades positions. It truly, I mean, it literally, it's like, if you get this certification, you get this. And that's, to me, very clear cut. The ones I have a greater concern with are the IT positions. We keep reclassifying these IT positions. We've had no job studies. We've had no actual review of the positions, the current positions. We received a very long email regarding issues in IS&T, which I apparently we received this another email last year, but I did not receive that one because they had my email address wrong. So I am not comfortable with moving forward with the IS&T classifications until we actually look at what is happening in that area. Because and I don't mean us personally look at, but an actual job study of the department. Are we in line with the community or with the industry? Are we in line with other districts? Are we in line with the position? I know we keep getting told, oh, well, we said we brought this person in, we're going to do this and we're going to do this. There's, I would love to tell every person that we hire that you come here, you stick with us, and we are going to give you, what is it, 2% per range, you said?
That's correct.
So 38, 39, 40, so, you know, we're up at, that's a 10% raise. I would love to be able to say, you stay with us for X amount of years, I'm going to give you a 10% raise. But we can't just do that to everybody. You know, for me, with the facilities, it's clear that there's a program where you're actually receiving training, and I just haven't seen that with IS&T, and I haven't seen any market study or any. I mean, we have a historical practice, which from the best I can tell, and the times that I've asked over and over again, it was not a board-approved practice. It was just something that we do it this way because it's what we've always done. And at some point, you reach that point where, especially in human resources, when you're going to do reclassifications, you actually do a job study. You sit and you talk with that person and say, what are the duties you're currently doing in their job? You don't ask them what their job was before or what it is. You ask them, what are you currently doing in your job? And then you look at the market and you look at what other like positions are. So someone else in this district or that district, or you can go out to the industry and you say, okay, this is what this individual has told me they do. This is what the market shows me that other comparable positions that do these same tasks has done, and this is the pay scale. We have no idea where we are in line with that. And that's my concern with just the IS&T. As from what I see in the facilities, we're talking about from a 2 to a 3, that's a 2% raise, and there's certificates and there's certifications that are all attached to that. I see, it's just, for me, those two differences are very, I can't seem to reconcile them.
Mrs. Fisher?
Yes.
Is it my understanding, though, that we are not approving the people to get the raises if we approve these dollars in the budget?
No, we are. This is in the budget. Now, yes, they will. I understand that Mr. Miglerino said they'll come in an HR. They'll come in a big bulk, and I don't think any member of this board is going to willing to say, I will take these 3 off of that agenda item, and I'm going to just not approve those. I'm going to approve the rest. That's historically. I mean, I think we all know well that when it comes through on an HR agenda item, it's going to be brought forward. It's going to be just voted on.
I guess.
This is where I believe we would ask those questions.
And I appreciate the asking of the questions, and don't mind when we look into having a study session or of processes if we don't like the way the process is currently being handled, so that we can do it differently. I guess my point is that if we do not approve these funds to be in the budget, and we have a study at the beginning of next year that determines that those folks should be increased, the money will not be there. So I would like to believe that if this board says, keep these dollars here, but we want to ascertain through a study or a study session or some process whether or not these folks really get these upgrades, that our staff would do that. I'm asking us to look at having that money there in case it needs to be.
Jim, do we not already have contingency funds, bridge funds that would potentially be able to absorb? We're not talking about a significant cost. Or just the.
Yeah, President Fisher, as I mentioned previously, we have $200,000 unassigned in the budget as a contingency budget, as we have had, I think, the last decade.
So though I would say that those funds already exist. And I don't want to say push forward on something that's a complete unknown, but we do have a public comment as well. State your name for the record, please.
Hi, I'm Linda Slavic. I just wanted a quick comment about reclassifying as well as the apprenticeship program. At the Communication Council meeting, Mr. Miglerino gave me a nice kind of explained how the apprenticeship program works, since I never heard about it before. And I was just bringing up, it sounds like what, many times the classified as well as certified teachers go through that. We work the job so many years, we learn new skills, and I was asking about, he says every couple of years they get a 2% raise. And I was like, well, that sounds good. Why can't we get something like that for seniority? And he informed me that at 25 years you get $500. I was thinking for a unified district, we should all get a 2% raise. And reducing travel, that can make that happen. I think most classified and certified would like to see the consistency and being treated fairly.
Ms. Frank.
So, come to Ms. O'Brien's point. So, make sure I'm understanding this correctly, and it's late, so it's very possible I'm not understanding it correctly. If we approve a budget that has the process-driven reclassifications, it has funding in it for reclassifications, and then we determine that we don't wish to fund X number of reclassifications, or we don't approve, I guess I should say, those reclassifications, then does that money then go into the contingency fund?
President Fisher,
or what happens to
Ms.
that
Frank,
money?
yes, it would just add to our contingency fund.
Okay, so it sounds like we have two different thought processes here. One is to approve the budget without the money for the reclassification, and then if we determine we want to reclassify them, we take money from the contingency fund. And the other thought is to include it in the budget and then determine whether or not we wish to do those reclassifications, and if not, add money into the contingency fund. Am I representing?
Yeah, I think you're correct.
Okay.
I think the difference between what Ms. O'Brien and I are saying is she trusts that it will happen that way. And I do not. My fear is that it'll be stuck in the bottom of an HR agenda item and it'll just be pushed forward, and the board won't have an option to actually move that forward. If we, however, want to not approve this specific, but say we want to add the dollar amount into contingency, not attached to this, I'm fine with that, if that makes sense.
Do we not have the ability to remove items from consent agenda from HR?
Of course we do.
We always have the access to remove, but would you ever, we have the ability to remove anything. Would you ever want to, and I personally, I'm going to tell you, this is a bad idea to ever do. Would you ever want to pull an HR agenda item and I will take Bob, Joe, and Sue for separate consideration?
Well,
that would be, in my mind, a disparate thing to do to an employee, and I don't believe
so. It wouldn't be in the consent agenda by name, it would be by position, so we wouldn't be talking about.
When it comes in an HR agenda item, it is in there by name. The name of the person, their position, and the reclassification. If you look at our HR item, it is by name. That's my concern. I would never do that to an employee.
To Ms. Frank's point, to everyone's point at this point, sorry about that. When we include, if we were to include this, it does not, for me, does not mean that we have employees that would be so dishonest that they would try to sneak something in. I believe that what we want to do is prove and provide the proof of the value that these changes would add. I don't believe that Mr. Anderson would bring this forward if it wasn't going to add value to our employees and our students. So I would like to go through with this knowing full well that we are going to do a process so we can see the process of how this is done, and to see that that process perhaps is no different than the apprenticeship process. But we're sitting here talking about a process that we haven't seen. We don't have Dr. or Mr. Anderson here to explain to us how this works. And I am not mistrusting of the people that we pay to do these jobs. I'm not saying that there are not mistakes that are made and other people may not have reason to trust. But I would like to start this off with, yes, let's, I want to leave it in, and I want to have the proof of the value added from those reclassifications.
State your name,
Oh, I
please.
didn't see you. Sorry.
Steve Lund, excuse me. Steve Lund, thank you once again. I sent each of you an email and tried to detail some of the, kind of in a summary form, some of what all goes on. I can't speak directly to the IS&T type procedure, although I did speak with Mr. Anderson, and the same type of situation happens there. When they can't fill a position, they will lower the grade of position to somebody who can do the lower grade, as in my case, I came in as an apprentice and trained for 4 years, tested each year, and then tested out at the end of 4, and then at the end of 3 more, basically as an incentive to stay with the district, because now the district has, 7 years invested in me. I'm maxed out at one range higher, 2%. Mr. Anderson has explained to me that his situation is similar, not exactly the same. They go through a time frame, I believe it was 3 years, and at that point in time, they are assigned to the position that they would be moved to, and they are observed for 3 months. And they have to perform that job for 3 months in order to qualify for it. I don't know if that's really a proper answer for what you're asking for, but I did speak with them, and I can say that all 9 of these positions have completed what was asked of them when all of this was presented as the procedure we use to try to fill positions that we can't fill at the moment. So we bring people in, teach them how to do it, so that we can keep them in the district. So I don't know if that helps a little or just adds more words.
Well, your email did answer for me, at least it answered the apprentice program, taking up the 1 step and the certifications and the testing. It did. The others don't make sense to me because they're not just 1%, they're 10%. They're large percentages, and we have not done a job study, to, I don't know, quote, I'm not trying to quote Ms. Ordway, but when we were talking about a position in January, she stated it, and I thought about it, and she was right. We should not just do something but we should have an actual job study. She said she was not comfortable just reclassifying without a job study. And I agree, and I think especially when you're looking at 10%, I think a job study is in order. And I'm not comfortable moving forward with that large of an adjustment. And if I look at the one below it, it's even more than 10%. So that's more the concern for me. I can understand the training and going up to 1, but we're talking about a whole different ballgame.
So, but just to make sure I understand, you are clear with taking that amount of money, putting it into the contingency, so as a parking spot.
Absolutely. Because I'm not opposed. If we do a job study and it says that this is valid and it's what we need to do, I have no problem doing it and holding the money in contingent. But we have experienced in the past where something is put on an agenda item where it's mixed in with everything else. And as a board member, I've chose not to pull something off because it would be irresponsible. It would be embarrassing to the person that would be pulled off. It would be embarrassing. It would be an inappropriate thing.
So personally, and I know it's getting late, I think it's important to have the money somewhere in the budget so that if it is determined that those employees are deserving of the reclassification, or we would be remiss in not providing that to them, then we need the money in the budget somewhere so that we then have the capability of doing
So, and
doing
then
that.
if you're, I'm fine with holding it in a contingency, but not approving it to be applied.
Fine if it's going
Yeah.
to be in a contingency and not dollars spent on one of those other line items, if that's what we're saying. So I don't know how Jim delineates that, and
It's just a
says-
matter of we're not approving that this is a done deal. It's, I guess, what I'm
Oh,
saying.
Can we-
President Fisher, as I heard, and I think we're speaking specifically about the IS&T positions, right? There was less of a objection to the apprentice program? So we'll provide additional information about the IS&T. We'll leave it included in terms of having the dollars reserved, but we will not bring anything forward for the board in an HR change or otherwise until we get an agreement on these three IS&T positions.
Yeah, I just would like to see a job study. I don't want to make a decision I don't want to make a decision that's irresponsible financially, but I also don't want to make a decision that's irresponsible for the district as a whole. I think it sends a clear message when we have teachers that when we're going to give a reclass something that to this extent, I think it's respectful to say that we are making a mindful effort to look at the comparables and make sure what we're making is a reasonable and responsible decision, and then moving forward.
Last two
Continue,
comments. I just wanted to make sure that it was understood that, as I say quite frequently, I try very hard to represent all classified, not just DVESPA members. So I spoke on behalf of both of these issues that you're talking about tonight. The second thing would be, in consideration that these are procedures, if you will, not necessarily policies, that have been in place for quite some time. I'm in the district for going on 12 years. At 1 year in, I started in on this program and went through all of that. These are people who did the same thing. They came in with the understanding, if I take this because I'm not qualified for this, I can be trained and move up. And I would just say, please consider that when you're thinking about if you're wanting to change something in the future. That's a different subject than not giving this to these folks, and I'm trying to be gentle with my argument, but
Actually, you made a very wonderful point,
Okay.
and I agree.
Thank you.
We do need to look at that, but we need to make sure that it's reasonable. And Mr. Tiller, please state your
Quickly,
name
I'm
for the.
Tim Tiller. I run a managed service provider company here in Phoenix, which is IT. That's all we do is IT. And I want to make sure that we understand Phoenix is a very, very competitive market when it comes to IT. Extremely competitive. And when I look at I'm assuming this is an annual amount that we're talking about?
Mr. Tiller,
for me,
that's an annual amount with the benefit burden as well added
I
to
mean,
it.
when I look at that, the cost to replace that position is going to be multiple times what you're saying here for a raise.
That's not the cost of the position, just I want you to make sure
I'm
you
saying,
understand that.
but
That's
if
the
for some
cost of the
reason you
increase.
don't reclassify them and they don't get the increase that we're talking about here, and they go elsewhere, because I can tell you, in the valley, they can. I fight for it every day. I think we're chasing pennies, and we've spent a lot of time talking about $23,000, and I think that you've hired very intelligent people who can make that decision, and my perception is the board is overstepping their boundaries in governance, and that you have the opportunity at the time to make a change, and if you're too lazy to make that change or concerned about that, I think it's a bigger issue. I'm sorry? Well, I mean, I think the comment was, it gets stuck on a consent item and we just breeze through it. So my question is, if you're concerned about then take the time.
Well, no,
that
I
you
mean, I
have.
think, I appreciate your comment, appreciate your expertise on IS&T, but I think some of your comments were a little bit out of line because we're trying to address concerns that other people have brought forward, which parents with class sizes of 40, the fact that we can't even fill all our teaching positions. And sometimes when things are on a consent agenda, they're on a consent agenda in a way. I can answer this. This is about, he commented on the budget and I'm responding to what he said. And there's no way to do it without embarrassing people. So it's not a matter of laziness, it's a matter of trying to be respectful of people.
Right.
I appreciate the clarification.
Well, I just want to
apologize
note,
for the
I do want to note that it's not, the consent agenda isn't for laziness, and my desire to address it here is not because of that. It's, to look at the actual positions is responsible, because could they go somewhere? That's the question that we don't know.
But they could. I mean, Phoenix is a very
I will tell you, I
IT
have a lot
market.
of, there are a lot of techs that I work with that don't have, we don't know what skill set these individuals even have. That's all I'm asking for is a position study session. And because you are in the tech, and I want this understood because it will assist Mr. Miglerino, is if you are hiring a technician who has the skill sets of basic setup and teardown, you don't want to hire them as a software engineer or a tech 3. So I do understand that, but what we need to understand is that we're making reasonable decisions, and that's all I'm seeking to do.
And all I'm saying is I want to have the confidence in the people that you hire to make that decision.
Right, but we've had history that
Okay.
otherwise.
Thank
Okay,
you
can we
very
go on
much,
to the
Jim.
next one, Jim?
Certainly. So the next slide here shows the reclassification and new staffing requests. In fact, I don't think there are any new staffing requests on this. These are all reclassifications. I apologize for the title at the top. These are all reclassifications, but they're all from non-M&O funds. And I will speak to the first 3 items are cleanup items in which we are trying to address an issue that over time we end up with one person that has assumed multiple jobs, and they're being paid at 2 different rates, yet they never clock in and clock out in a different position. They have just evolved into, and these are very small amounts, by the way. You can see $185, $130. So these are just cleanup provisions in the first 3. The fourth item is our lead supervisor, and converting that from a position that was exempt, that was moved onto the hourly range due to the new provision in the Department of Labor for the minimum requirement, salary requirement to be exempt. This is providing a salary increase to get them to an exempt position, and funding it from our food and nutrition funds. The other requests there are also entrepreneurial type funds. The grant of the formerly Youth Transition Program, or YTP, is now TSW. And then Community Ed, which is a growing program, and those amounts, the second to last line is for one individual, one accounting clerk. The last line there is actually for 3 positions, $8,900 that would be split amongst 3 positions in reclassifying their accounting clerk positions within Community Ed. Again, that program is the program that has been growing, and that has helped us to offset some of the burden within our M&O dilemmas in the past several years. So I'll leave it there for future discussion, or maybe no discussion at all.
Okay,
Maybe
so
I try and
basically
encourage
what you're
that.
saying is the fourth one down is a legal required issue. The next one is that we're just adding an hour, nothing's really changed. And then the last one is 3 positions, correct?
The very last one is for 3 positions. Yeah, as noted in the comment in the far right side, it says it is for 3 positions. So it's not $8,900 that one person is getting. That's divided over 3 people.
Right. Okay. Does anybody else have any other comments on that page? Nope.
Okay, so this next page is, let me follow along here. I don't know that you can even see that. These are the additional positions, starting with the Science Center clerk. We did provide information to the board regarding the increase in the FOSS science kits. And this is, the original request was for 1.0. We are, that has been revised downward to a 0.5, a half-time person to help out in the science warehouse with the increased demand of the FOSS kits that get refurbished and then sent back out to the schools. And that is the total cost, including the burden, the benefit burden for a 0.5 position at a range 20. Community Ed is asking for a secretary for their position. That's a one person at range 28, and again, that is salary and benefit cost for the full FTE. And then CIA has, and Student Support Services has a program, a pilot program in which 2 behavior flight team personnel and 3 additional individuals would be at a pilot program for the Berry Goldwater region that would be housed at Village Meadows Elementary, 1 teacher, 2 paraprofessionals, and then the additional support of 2 behavior flight teams. It does say 3.0 social worker. That got reduced through the process from $165,000 down to $130,000. So those 4 requests, and again, not all of this is coming out of M&O. The community education program would pay for their additional secretary, and these have already been included in the budget.
Okay, so the top one I recall from our last conversation was it was just needed, is what I had understood, correct? It was just flat out needed.
Just based on volume alone, the science group.
Right. And then the next one, I believe we had, and I'm sure you answered the question, but I've slept since then and it's getting late. The Secretary 5, didn't we just add one last year?
We did not. In fact, Community Ed does not have a secretary position, although they have a director. So most of those jobs are assumed by either the director or other staff within the
I
department.
thought we had added someone there last year, a clerk or something.
Not a secretary.
So was it a clerk that we added?
Potentially a clerk.
Ms. Frank, and then we have a public comment.
Okay, so regarding the behavior flight team and the positions for the pilot behavior program at Village Meadows, we did, since that particular, those are to support the proposed changes in special ed. Is that correct? So since those proposed changes have not been approved, I'm wondering if those monies could go into the contingency fund so the money is there when and if it is approved, but so that we have the funds available, if that makes sense.
President Fisher, Ms. Frank, in fact, that's kind of where they would be at. I mean, those positions would not be approved until, again, the HR changes were officially approved by the board. But so the money would be earmarked for that, but it wouldn't necessarily be implemented until the board formally.
Right, that program would have to be approved before you could start interviewing and all of that. So, yeah, so I would say those should go into sort of a parking spot.
Hi, I'm Linda Slavic. I understand the apprenticeship program, the theory behind it, how they learn their job and spend time in it. I understand that, but every single year I've been going to the board meetings now for, 4 years now, and every single summer we reclassify district office employees. The reclassifying needs to stop. Basically, you add a few things to their job and they get raises. You guys call it reclassifying, but basically it is raises. We can reclassify me, because every year you add things to my plate. Tonight you told me I'm going to learn a coding program. I've learned SEI and PBS, PDSA, SEI. I've learned all, Eureka. 1 year it was Engaging York, the next year's Eureka. Thinking maps. Right from the start, all these different programs, and yet many years teachers did not make a raise at all, or we went backwards. So we really need, like I said, we are a unified district. We need to stay true to that and stop giving reclassifying, please.
Okay, so hearing no other comments about this, just to keep things moving, I know it's getting late.
Yeah, I think obviously these positions would have to come before the board to be approved, because we don't even know, they don't exist yet.
That's correct.
Yeah, so, but hold the money.
Okay. We'll get into some more readable slides here, but we'll get through this quickly. So here's the capital plan for next year, and we always need to look at the prior year to see exactly how much capital dollars that we have, because any unspent capital we can move forward as long as we build that into the budget itself. So we're anticipating that there would be about $6.5 million in capital expenses. I'm reading the FY17 projected capital expenses, plus the Paxton Labs, $150,000, the frontline resource software. This was estimated at 175, it was 182 when we approved that earlier this evening. So $6.8 million against a $7.3 million budget limit. So that gives us $500,000 amongst friends. We started at $4 million in our capital budget. We reduced it with those options that we talked about. So not doing the CTE budget, CTE textbook adoption, and reducing the capital allocation. That ends up meaning that the schools would receive 68% of the capital allocation that they enjoyed today. And that gives us about $88,000 worth of unassigned capital. So again, we would be building a budget that would show you about a $3 million capital expenditure when, and that is a combination of $2.5 million of district additional assistance and $500,000 worth of carry forward. Okay. The teacher-specific legislative pay, this is going to be new for us. It's also new for everybody, including the Department of Education. It will be paid in fiscal year 18. It's 1.06% of your fiscal year 17 instructional salary, so anything that you were paid out of Function 1000. You must be a teacher employed by a public school in fiscal year 17 and in fiscal year 18 to receive the money. It does, as I mentioned earlier, add to our M&O override amount. And specifically contracted teachers or smart schools teachers are excluded from it. They're not eligible to receive this raise. I believe that's a little bit problematic, so I'll talk about that when we get to our draft recommendation. But it does require a plan to be developed, and it does require that plan, that there's a public notice of that plan and a public hearing. So the way that ADE can facilitate that is it needs to be done when we adopt the budget. So this will be on the July 11th agenda because it's the only way ADE can meet the obligation of the statutory requirement for the publication. What we are suggesting is that all eligible teachers get a one-time payment of the 1.6% of their fiscal year 17 instructional salary, and that does beg the question, how do you find out what somebody's fiscal year 17 instructional salary was if they weren't employed with us last year but were employed with a public school somewhere other than Deer Valley? We have to work that out. Not only do we have to work that out, so does every other district. So that is a work in progress. But there is a pay period date of December 21st, so I'm suggesting that. I have not cleared that with the powers that be. No offense, Dr. V, but that happens to be payroll and benefits in terms of the timing of the workload. But we have committed to try and get that payment as soon as the department finalizes their work, which is scheduled by the statute for December 1st. So we figured that would be a reasonable amount of time and would also provide that right before the holiday break. We are also suggesting, because we don't think that our contracted teachers should not participate, again, this is a draft recommendation that we're sharing with you for the very first time, that non-eligible teachers, which are our contracted Smart Schools employees, that we use the M&O increase, the M&O override increase that this generates to fund a 1.06% one-time payment to them as well. We think the M&O override increase will be much more than the expense of this, and it will honor those people that have certainly longevity just because unfortunately they happen to go into our phased retirement plan potentially last year or this year, that would deem them ineligible. Again, because in the year that they're in smart schools, they are not a teacher of a public school. They are a smart schools teacher. So this would give us an ability to be able to include, or at least giving them an equivalent raise that all the other teachers would be getting. So this will be new this year. We won't see this again, absent any discussion about this, until the July 11th board meeting.
And so basically, you're just saying you want to keep them whole. They are our long-term teachers. They've been with us forever. They just happen to be smart schools for a year.
That is correct.
Jim, and you estimate how many teachers?
I don't have an exact count. We had about 40 people on the list, so I'm estimating that to be about 25 teachers. So it'd be 25 in this year and 25 in last year. Well, this year and next year, I should say.
Aren't they already receiving a benefit by
They are. I mean,
double dipping? I mean, they're making more than teachers who aren't on smart schools.
Right, they're retired. They are retired. They're collecting their
They're
retirement.
collecting their retirement.
80% of what they would be as a teacher. Oh, no, and I do understand that. I understand it's on top of their retirement, but their option is they could just retire, flat out retire, and then go teach at a charter school. And collect 100% of their pay, and we lose a highly experienced teacher. That's the whole reason we go to smart schools and use that, so that we can retain our experience. Ms. O'Brien?
Mr. Miglerino, bear with me, the number of years of service for a smart schools person count towards our number of years of service, that average number, teacher experience index? Thank you.
Yeah, President Fisher, Ms. O'Brien, yes, so teacher experience index, yes, the contracted employees do count towards our help in increasing our teacher experience index, which adds money to the budget.
Which is why we want to retain them. That's the purpose for holding them.
Okay, and I want to ensure that this document that we're talking about, that is a 1.06% pay raise, is for teachers only.
Correct. Legislatively, have to be a teacher in a public school in both fiscal year 17 and fiscal year 18, and be paid out of function 1,000.
Okay, so not classified staff, not administrative staff.
That is correct.
Thank you.
And again, this is the first time we're getting to share this with you. I will confess, this is my brainchild. I'm not wed to it. I thought it would be a nice gesture. We do get an M&O override bump, and it is that M&O override bump that I'm calling is included in the numbers that we looked at previously. So it's not in addition to the $100,000 that we shared on the one of the very first slides.
I just have to say I was at that same ASBO presentation when we originally started talking about this, and I just got to give you kudos. I think you did a wonderful job here, because I do think it honors our employees, and I understand the double dipping concept, but that keeping that index up, and they didn't leave us. The option they had was to retire, do smart schools and stay with us, or retire, take their retirement and get 100% salary at a charter or a private school, and I appreciate those individuals sticking with us.
Sure, and I wasn't trying to get credit for it. I just want you to know that I haven't shared this this hasn't gone through a process other than I've shared it with some colleagues, trying to, just test the waters with, I was looking for the "are you crazy" reaction.
But just around the water cooler today.
Yeah, correct.
Okay, thank you for the explanation.
I think it's better than we saw. Ms. O'Brien?
Is there anything else you need from us, Mr. Miglerino, this evening, or you have accomplished, or have we accomplished what you needed to have us accomplish?
Yeah, and I just to be clear, I think what we'll do is we'll present the budget as we presented it this evening. And the only thing I'm uncertain about is should we select anything off of this list to include in the budget specifically. Even the clicker doesn't want to work this late.
In my opinion, my opinion, and we can all each give an opinion, so that, and if, to give you an idea, as you're going through that budget, you magically find dollars here somewhere, something, hey, I didn't calculate that, I expect this. If you find money to cover these, I absolutely would like to see them fulfilled. I mean, it's what our people have said they need, it's what they've said they want. All three of our associations are in agreement with it.
And in the order that they're presented there, assuming that they can be afforded.
Yeah,
So, you know, and I'll just do this for illustrative purposes. So if we end up with $150,000 of unassigned funds, we don't have enough to do option 5 or priority 5, but we would have enough to do priority 6. So just pick the ones that we can afford, and then the balance, in that example, the $11,000 would be added just to our contingency.
That would be my preference, and I'll let the rest of the board speak for themselves.
That would also be my preference, Mr. Merglerino.
Ms. Tweedy?
Well, it would be my preference, but I would really like to try hard to find the money to fund 5 and 6, because I've heard from schools all over the district that this is really problematic for them to function.
And I just, because we spent a lot of time with the budget, unless we've made a grave error, I don't think we'll be able to afford 5 and 6. We might be able to somehow find money for 5, but I think that's a long shot. And I'm just trying to give you a realistic expectation of where we're at. We're really tight on funds. We know that we have the $100,000. The carry forward will likely creep up a little bit. I don't think it's going to get to be $125,000 because we're already in the middle of June.
Sure.
But-
Sorry.
Yeah, but we'll go ahead and put that together in that fashion.
And I would like to thank you, Mr. Merglerino, and all the staff who've worked on so diligently to find the dollars and work out agreements and be creative in solutions. It speaks volumes about this district and the staff we have in it, that we've worked together to find money to give everybody a raise and do a couple of other things there. So thank you all.
I agree.
And I appreciate you saying that, and I would echo that. And I know Ms. Mock is here.
Yeah, that's what I was pointing. I wanted you to grab her because I got to tell you, I've come by multiple times to talk with her.
And not just Ms. Mock, but certainly the NST and everybody else that has worked on this. They deserve a lot of credit for the time and commitment.
Absolutely.
Thank
you. Any other final comments, Ms. Ordway?
Before we adjourn the meeting, I just want to say to all a good night.
Awesome. Yes, awesome.
I move to adjourn the meeting.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.